Chapter 193. Under the dim candlelight, 3 people were sitting at the long table in the Red Castle's dining hall. Colin, Vera, and the future brother-in-law, Charles. After thinking about it, Vera decided to meet her brother. Although she was now disgusted with her adoptive father, she still had some feelings for her brother. However, after learning about Colin and Charles's plan, Vera was no longer in the mood to catch up with her brother. Instead, she began to worry about Colin's safety. As Charles's identity still needed to be kept a secret, there were no other attendants in the dining hall. The butler, Eamon, was serving them personally. After quietly finishing their meal, Eamon brought 3 desserts. However, Vera was obviously not in the mood to enjoy the desserts now. She looked up at Colin and asked, "Colin, are you really not willing to take me with you? I am a mage and I can be of great help to you on the battlefield." Colin held Vera's little hand and smiled, "No need. Our surprise attack this time depends on the element of surprise. There should not be any hard battles. Moreover, I need you to help me guard Ice Stone City. In case the northern frontier becomes chaotic, there must be someone I trust here who is of sufficient status to take charge." Charles also smiled and persuaded, "Vera, you should stay in Ice Stone City with peace of mind. It is already inappropriate for you to sneak into the Red Castle. If you are abducted to the Blue Ice Field now, I am afraid that father will punish Viscount Angley when he finds out." In the face of Charles's teasing, Vera reluctantly pulled out a polite smile. The Duke's eldest son obviously did not know what Vera had experienced in Silvermoon City. He thought that the adoptive father and daughter were still as close as before. Colin did not expose him and looked at everything in front of him with a smile. He was thinking about when to tell Charles that his biological father had sold him out in order to create an opportunity for the Black Cavalry to destroy the Troll army. If Charles knew that the suffering he had suffered was actually caused by his own father, that scene. It would be very interesting. He wouldn't have another filial son, would he? Just as Colin was thinking about how he should deal with the Duke and his son, Vera's clear voice sounded again. "By the way, Colin, isn't there a paladin prince in the giant demon empire? If he's in the Troll King city. Don't worry, my good sister." Charles smiled and comforted him. This Saint Samurai prince was seriously injured in the battle with his father. He has already returned to the extreme north to recuperate. In his current state, if he dares to appear in the giant devil royal city, then perhaps we'll have an extremely dazzling addition to our list of achievements. Colin suddenly thought of something and asked, "I heard that it is very difficult to injure a Saint Realm expert, but once injured, it will be extremely troublesome." That's right. The body of a Saint-level combatant was vastly different from that of an ordinary person. They already possessed a trace of divinity. But because of this, if their bodies were to be harmed, they would need to repair this trace of divinity. However, condensing divinity in the mortal world is extremely difficult. Therefore, once a Saint-level combatant is injured, it will be very difficult for them to completely recover without 2 or 3 years. Colin nodded and asked in a casual tone, "Then what about the Duke of St. Hilda? Is his injury also very serious?" Father's injury is indeed somewhat troublesome." Charles sighed, then smiled and comforted him. "However, you don't have to worry too much. The church has already sent a cardinal to Chilly Winter to personally treat father's injury." Hearing this, Colin suddenly thought of the honorary bishop who was about to go to Chilly Winter to take up a post, as well as Bishop Jean who was said to have passed away due to illness. "That's good." Colin smiled as if he was finally relieved. In the morning 3 days later, a low bugle horn sounded in the outskirts of Ice Stone City. Teams of cavalry urged their mounts and set off on their journey to the north under the orders of their officers. For this surprise attack on the Troll King city, Colin mobilized a total of 11,000 pure cavalry soldiers. Among them were 6,000 black cavalry soldiers, 3,000 Silvermoon Guard soldiers, and 2,000 new recruits that Knight Charles had trained in Ice Stone City in the past year. There was no need to doubt the battle strength of the Black Cavalry veterans, but the battle strength of the Silvermoon Guard soldiers and the new recruits of Ice Stone City was somewhat worrying. However, Colin still brought them along. After all, if they did not experience the test of blood and fire, these new recruits would never be able to become true elites. As for the Silvermoon Guard's cavalry, Colin hoped that they could be integrated into the Black Cavalry system. This surprise attack on the Troll King's city was a good opportunity to let these half-elves experience the battle style of the Black Cavalry. At the top of Ice Stone City's walls, Colin once again reminded Steward Aemon and Knight Charles. He would be accompanying the army this time, so Charles and Aemon would be in charge of the military and political affairs in the territory. One of them was the old steward of the Angeli family, and the other was Colin's blood descendant, so he naturally did not have to worry about their loyalty. Moreover, their abilities were also quite outstanding. With them guarding the rear, Colin was very assured. In the end, Colin reluctantly said goodbye to Vera. Although the girl was very reluctant, she still revealed a bright smile in order not to worry Colin. It was like a plum blossom blooming in the middle of winter. "When you return in triumph, I will marry you." Colin looked at the girl's beautiful smile in front of him and his chest instantly filled with pride. He laughed loudly. "Okay." The two of them did not deliberately lower their voices, so everyone around them heard it. The retainers of the Angeli family naturally revealed motherly smiles, happy for their lord. Vera's identity was noble enough, so of course she was worthy of Colin. Moreover, this was the bloodline of the Paladin family. If she really married Colin, then the Angeli family would be considered as a high-ranking noble family in the Empire of Light. Viscounts would definitely not be the end of the Angeli family. If another Paladin appeared in the future, then the entire political landscape of the Empire of Light would undergo a drastic change. Of course, the probability of this happening was extremely small. The birth of a Paladin was very difficult. From the historical records of the Empire of Light, almost all of the Paladin powerhouses were the descendants of Paladin parents. Therefore, the 5 major Paladin families of the Empire of Light liked to intermarry. Of course, it was not impossible to have a Paladin descendant if only one of the parents had the bloodline of the Paladin. However, in the few cases, the father was a member of the Paladin family. Only the mother was a member of the Paladin family. There had never been a case of a Paladin descendant. Maybe the Angeli family could break this record. Only Charles had a speechless expression on his face, and he wanted to remind his sister to be more reserved. "Let's go." Colin ordered, and tens of thousands of cavalrymen suddenly surged and rushed towards the ice field in the north. The sound of the horses' hooves was like rolling thunder, shaking the wilderness. The flags fluttered in the air, guiding the direction of the cavalrymen's march. Vera stood on top of the city wall, looking at the dense cavalrymen heading north. In addition to being worried about Colin's safety, she was also full of pride. How could the trolls and rats be a match for such a strong northern frontier army? Chapter 194. At the end of March, the situation at the northern frontier was not optimistic. As the weather gradually turned warmer, a group of ambitious people seemed to be ready for action. The lords of the northern frontier all smelled the scent of war and began to gather their troops to strengthen the city's defenses. Although the lords should be actively preparing for spring plowing so that the worsening famine would not continue to spread, the current situation was not ideal. Unfortunately, the weak situation at the northern frontier made it impossible for the lords to care about spring plowing. Moreover, if the slaves and civilians starved to death, the lords would naturally be more concerned about the safety of their own territories. Finally, on the first day of April, a man who claimed to be a descendant of the House of St. Theon officially announced his identity in Ironforge City. At the same time, he claimed that it was the Duke of St. Hilda's incompetence that led to the unprecedented famine at the northern frontier. Therefore, as a descendant of the Paladin family, he spoke up for the countless people of the northern frontier who were suffering from the famine. He asked the Duke of St. Hilda to voluntarily give up his title of Lord of the Northern Frontier and let someone more capable take on the responsibility of protecting the northern frontier. After Mr. Theon's public statement, a group of northern frontier nobles led by Marquis Dawson and Earl Ullman also publicly announced that they wanted the Duke of St. Hilda to take responsibility for the famine at the northern frontier. The sudden return of the House of St. Theon, who had been silent for 300 years, completely stirred up the situation at the northern frontier. While the lords of the northern frontier were stunned, they began to consider which side to take. As for the people of the northern frontier, with the reputation of the House of St. Hilda for thousands of years, the people of the northern frontier naturally did not care about the House of St. Theon. In fact, many people had already forgotten about this paladin family. However, the famine that had ravaged the northern frontier for half a year had accumulated a lot of dissatisfaction with the House of St. Hilda. Now that the House of St. Theon had ignited this dissatisfaction, it instantly became a prairie fire. Countless people in the northern frontier who didn't have enough to eat began to think that perhaps it was time for the northern frontier to change masters. In the face of House St. Herd's public attack, Duke St. Hilda finally appeared in public. This was also his first public appearance since his duel with the Saint Samurai. The Lord of the Northern Frontier unceremoniously launched a counterattack, refuting the absurd remarks of the House of St. Theon and claiming that they were the culprits of the chaos in the Northern Frontier. At the same time, he announced that Marquis Dawson, Earl Oman, and the other lords of the Northern Frontier were traitors and decided to immediately strip them of their titles and fiefs. He also sent the Golden Lion Legion to Ironforge City in an attempt to eliminate the Dwarven Rebellion. In addition, the Duke of St. Hilda also issued an emergency conscription order, requesting all the lords and mercenary groups in the northern frontier to join the war against the dwarves. In an instant, the northern frontier was in turmoil, and the War of the Lion and the Tiger had officially begun. Just as the northern frontier was in chaos, Colin had already led his army to the snowy mountains. Here, the cold wind howled and snow covered the sky. There was no sign of spring at all. If they went any further, even if they officially entered the territory of the Troll Empire, Colin and the others would no longer be able to hide their tracks. Of course, in order to enter the Troll Empire, they still had to pass through a final barrier. Lord Viscount Angley, Sir Charles. A weather-beaten knight of the House of St. Hilda was brought to the temporary command post and bowed to Colin and Charles. He wore a full set of chainmail, with the insignia of the Golden Lion Legion on his chest. He had a knight's sword and kite shield at his waist, and a conical helmet in his left hand. The various cuts and bloodstains on his equipment showed that he had recently experienced a bloody battle. "Knight Brad, what's the situation at Gale Castle?" Charles asked anxiously. The Gale Castle he spoke of was one of the 3 castles that the Troll Empire had given to the Golden Lion Legion. It was also the castle that Charles had served in before. Colin could only truly enter the territory of the Troll Empire after passing through this castle. This Knight Brad was the commander of the garrison that guarded Gale Castle. The Troll army south arrived at Gale Castle 13 days ago and launched an attack on us. Our army defended for a day, but the Trolls still managed to take over Gale Castle in the end. After Gale Castle fell, I led the remaining troops out and hid in the snowy mountains, waiting for reinforcements. How many people do you have now? When we retreated, there were more than 500 people, but some of them got separated. Now, there are only about 200 people left. Knight Brad's expression was gloomy. Colin obviously understood that the separated that Knight Brad was talking about was actually escaping. However, these people could not be blamed for becoming deserters. After all, this place was too far from the northern frontier, and reinforcements seemed to be out of reach. Furthermore, most of the garrison were new recruits, so it was not unusual for them to escape in despair. The Trolls left after taking over Gale Castle. Yes, they only rested in Gale Castle for half a day before hurriedly heading south. Yes. Colin calculated the time and realized that he should have just brushed shoulders with the Troll army that was heading south. This was actually very normal. The firmament icefield was so big that it was normal for two armies to brush shoulders. It was rare for them to bump into each other head-on. What about the other two castles? 2 days ago, I saw smoke rising in the direction of the other two castles. So, they should have been taken over by the trolls. Colin nodded. He was not surprised. The Golden Lion Legion had only placed so few troops here. Obviously, they did not intend to hold on. What's the situation in Gale Castle now? Do you know? Yes. The trolls did not leave too many troops to guard it. I estimate that there are only about 1,000 or 2,000 of them, and the defense is extremely lax. I even tried to sneak up to less than 100 meters away from the castle to observe at night, but it did not attract the attention of the guards. Well, do you have any suggestions on how to attack Gale Castle? Knight Brad laughed when he heard this question. Charles laughed too. He looked at Knight Brad and explained, Viscount Angley, when the troll army first mobilized, we realized that Gale Castle would definitely fall. So, in order to make it easier for us to come back in the future, we did something to the walls of the castle. Oh. Colin's eyes lit up. He hurriedly asked, what did you do? In the southeast corner of Gale Castle, the foundation of a section of the wall has been deliberately hollowed out by us. So, now, we only need to hit it a few times with black wood and it will collapse. Good. Colin clapped his hands excitedly. He then ordered, Knight Brad, please lead your men to prepare the siege equipment. When the sun rises tomorrow morning, we will attack. Yes. Chapter 195. Cam was a warrior of the 4th rank. Similar to the human knights, the troll race's warrior profession was usually reserved for the nobles. However, warrior Cam was still a mercenary. This was rather unusual. This was because most nobles were more willing to fight for glory than for money. But Cam was an anomaly. He liked money more. When he was still Baron Cam, in order to get more taxes, he raised the tax rate in his territory to a shocking 9 out of 10. It could be imagined that Baron Carm's citizens would soon run away because they couldn't bear such exploitation. Then, Cam was determined by the Troll Emperor to have no management ability and was stripped of his title and territory. From then on, Baron Carm became Captain Carm. The Tush mercenary band he established was rather famous in the Troll Empire. They had close to 2,000 members and most of them were lunatics like Cam who valued money over their lives. This time, Cam received another mission, to guard the Howling Wind Castle. Letting a mercenary band guard a military stronghold at the Empire's border sounded a bit unreliable. Many mercenary bands had many members and many experts, but if they really met an elite army, they would only be wantonly slaughtered. Because of this, many more powerful troll mercenary bands rejected this mission. Only Cam, who valued money over his life, accepted it. Moreover, this troll warrior who talked about money even asked the military representative who issued the mission if the Tush mercenary band killed an invading enemy in the process of guarding the Howling Wind Castle, would there be additional rewards? Hearing this, the military representative had a strange expression, but he still promised Cam that for every enemy they killed, they would exchange their heads for 10 gold coins. 10 gold coins for one head. Cam heard this reward and his eyes turned red with excitement. He nodded and agreed to the deal. However, when Cam rubbed his hands and led the Tush mercenary band into the Howling Wind Castle, he was shocked to find that there were no traces of the enemy. In the first few days, the Tush mercenary band was very serious about patrolling. However, after a few days of peace, the mercenary band's lax nature was exposed. Drinking, slacking off, fighting over female slaves. In short, the whole Howling Wind Castle was in a mess because of the Tush mercenary group. Facing such a situation, Cam didn't care because in his opinion, it was fine as long as his mercenaries could kill. As for discipline, what the hell was that? The only thing that made the mercenary leader anxious was that the enemy had yet to appear. But soon, Commander Cam's dream came true. Early in the morning, there was a loud bang, and the entire Howling Wind Castle seemed to be shaken by a giant hand. Cam woke up with a start from his sleep. Just as he was wondering what had happened, he heard his subordinates shouting, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" This time, instead of being shocked, Cam was overjoyed. His eyes shone with a golden light. He quickly put on his chainmail, picked up his machete, and rushed out while shouting, "Brothers, kill! The chance to make a lot of money is here." Outside the Howling Wind Castle, Colin was overjoyed when he saw that Knight Brad had really knocked down a section of the wall with a few logs. He immediately ordered Knight Roger to lead the army into the city. Although he knew that the narrow terrain of the castle wasn't suitable for cavalry, he couldn't care less at this time. If they couldn't even take down the Howling Wind Castle, then what was the point of talking about the Troll King's city? They might as well just go back home. Knight Roger estimated the size of the gap in the wall and arranged 10 groups of cavalry, each group of 200 people, to charge into the city in batches. But before the first group of cavalry could charge, they saw the defenders of the Howling Wind Castle rushing out from the gap in the wall. What's going on? Knight Roger was confused. Knight Brad, who was at the foot of the wall, saw the troll soldiers rushing towards them and quickly led his men back. After running for some distance, Knight Brad looked back and was shocked to find that the troll soldiers were chasing after them. What's going on? Knight Brad was also dumbfounded. Didn't you see that we have cavalry? Why didn't you use the castle's terrain and come out to fight with cavalry? This isn't a trap, right? Colin saw the situation and was also confused. Why don't we test the waters? Knight Roger suggested. All right. When the trolls rush out a little more, send the cavalry to kill them, but don't charge into the city. Deal with the trolls outside the city first. Yes. Kill. The trolls chased after Knight Brad and the others, roaring and cursing, as if they were angry that these humans ran too fast and caused them to lose so many gold coins. At this time, Cam also rushed out of the Howling Wind Castle. This captain of the Tusk mercenary group was indeed not cut out for war. Of course, a mercenary group's battle was very different from a regular army's battle. But to be honest, Cam's brain wasn't very good. Which lord with a normal brain would set a tax rate of 9 out of 10, but at least there were some normal people around him. Captain. We can't charge anymore. We don't know the enemy's situation. If we rush out like this, what if the enemy is too strong? Bullsh *T. Cam glared and scolded, war depends on courage. If we don't even dare to charge, then what's the point of fighting? It seemed to make sense, but, in the next second, Cam regretted it. Dong dong dong, the ground suddenly began to tremble, and 2 cavalry units appeared on both sides of the Tusk mercenary group. They stuck close to the trolls' formation, and like a pair of large hands, they hugged the trolls that rushed out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, arrows rained down on the trolls' formation. Counterattack! Counterattack! Cam was furious. He roared and ordered his mercenaries to counterattack with arrows. But in the wilderness outside the city, there was too much space for the cavalry to move around. They maintained their high speed, and after shooting a wave of arrows, they immediately pulled away to avoid the trolls' counterattack. Then, when the trolls' arrow rain thinned out, they would approach again and shoot another wave of arrows. Because they were worried that this was a trap, the Black Cavalry's attack method was still very conservative. They didn't use a frontal assault, but instead used a harassment tactic, patiently cutting off the trolls' flesh bit by bit. In fact, Colin was still too careful. These troll mercenaries who didn't have heavy shields and didn't have a tight formation couldn't possibly withstand a frontal assault from the Black Cavalry. As time passed, Knight Roger gradually came to his senses. These trolls were a group of scattered soldiers, and couldn't even set up a basic military formation. They probably weren't a proper army. After receiving the report, Colin helplessly shook his head, sigh, it seems that the Troll Empire's internal defenses are really weak. Let's quickly end this battle. Yes. Chapter 196. The night deepened, and the silver moon hung high in the sky. The battle at the Gale Castle had already ended. The Tusk mercenary group, who valued money over their lives, had lost both their money and their lives. After quietly turning a few surviving troll warriors into blood thralls, Colin climbed to the top of the watchtower. In the howling cold wind, Charles was leaning on the fence, looking north. "What are you looking at?" Colin stepped forward and stood side by side with Charles. "Viscount Angley." Charles bowed slightly to Colin, then smiled and said, "I'm looking at the Troll King city. Just call me Colin." Colin smiled and waved his hand. "But can you see the Troll King city from here?" Of course not. However, I've been looking north almost every day for the past year. Even if I can't see the Troll King city, I can still feel its existence." Charles clenched his fists, and his eyes seemed to flicker with raging flames. "Have you been to the Troll King city?" "I have. I sneaked in with the caravan once before, but this time, we're going to kill our way in." Colin smiled. "I hope that the Troll King city is as easy to capture as this Gale Castle. It shouldn't be too difficult. After all, the Troll army has already gone south. Even the Troll King city probably won't have elite regular troops stationed there." Colin turned to look at Charles's side profile and suddenly frowned. "But Charles, don't you think that our journey has been a bit too smooth?" Charles was a little stunned. "Too smooth? Colin, what are you worried about? Do you think this is a trap for the trolls?" "Trap?" Charles could not help but laugh. "Colin, aren't you worrying a little too much? The trolls' last 100,000 troops have already gone south. It's inevitable that there will be emptiness inside. How can it be a trap?" Colin grabbed a handful of snow from the fence and kneaded it into 2 snowballs, one big and one small. "Charles, what do you think will happen if the trolls' army is a motley crew, and the last batch of elite troops are placed in the Troll King city?" "No. It can't be," Charles said in a daze as he looked at the snowball that kept changing its position in Colin's hand. "Do you know?" Colin smiled playfully. "Not long ago, I played a similar trick in Silvermoon City. Those stupid Eastern region people were fooled by me." "Really?" Charles smiled. "I heard that you defeated the Sky Horse army in Silvermoon City. How did you do it?" "It's very simple. First, I made the Eastern region people mistakenly believe that the Black Cavalry was hiding outside the city. But when the Eastern region people sent their elites to search for the Black Cavalry outside the city, they only found a group of half-elven recruits. The real Black Cavalry came out of Silvermoon City." Colin changed the positions of the snowballs in his hand. "It's that simple." Charles suddenly had a look of realization. He said in admiration, "It's indeed a brilliant plan." Colin stared into Charles's eyes as if trying to find something in them. "Charles, do you think the trolls are playing a similar trick on us now?" "This is impossible." Charles was surprised. "How did the trolls know that we would take the opportunity to attack the Troll King city? What if?" Colin's eyes had a trace of scrutiny. "Someone snitches." "Snitch?" The fear on Charles's face did not seem to be fake at all. "Colin, did you discover something? Did our whereabouts really get exposed?" "No, it's just a guess." "Phew. You scared me." Charles patted his chest and let out a long sigh. Then, he said in a sincere tone, "Colin, actually, your worries are not impossible. Let's do it this way. When we reach the Troll King city, we will launch a tentative attack. If the resistance in the city is too strong, it won't be too late for us to withdraw." "That makes sense." Colin threw out 2 snowballs. A moment later, they hit the ground and made 2 thuds. He patted the remaining snow on his hands and said with a smile, "I just patted around the Howling Wind Castle." I have to say, this castle is built very sturdy. If Knight Brad hadn't tampered with the walls and the guards in the city were that group of stupid mercenaries, I'm afraid we would have to pay a heavy price to take down this place. Charles puffed out his chest, and said in a proud tone, Colin, to tell you the truth, I actually asked Knight Brad to tamper with the walls so that we could take down this castle more smoothly. Colin ignored Charles's attempt to claim credit and continued, so, if such a sturdy fortress were to be retaken by the troll army heading south after we leave, hee. Tell me, don't you think we'll have nowhere to retreat to? Charles was stunned, as if he was really frightened by Colin's idea. After a while, he shook his head, and said, Colin, aren't you overthinking things? The troll army has long gone to the northern frontier. Why would they suddenly turn back? Colin did not answer this question. Instead, he said with a smile, Charles, you know, I hate two kinds of people the most. Which two? Charles asked in confusion. People who deceive me, and people who I can't deceive. Charles was speechless. This was the first time he had seen someone who said double standards so matter-of-factly. Colin looked at Charles with a smile, and said, if I were a troll, I would purposely make it look like a large-scale invasion to the south and trick Ice Stone City into sending out their most elite cavalry to ambush the troll capital. But in reality, the army heading south was nothing more than a motley crew of newly recruited soldiers, militia, and mercenary groups. The last elite army of the Giant Demon Empire was stationed in the Giant Demon King's city. When the northern frontier cavalry is badly battered at the troll capital and wants to retreat, they will find that the Howling Wind Castle has been reoccupied by the returning southern army. This way, isn't it like closing the door and beating the dog? Charles blinked, first nodded, then shook his head, and said, Colin, your analysis is reasonable, but the trolls can't have predicted that we would ambush the troll capital before we even sent out the troops, right? Yes. Colin leaned against the railing and stared into Charles's eyes. Unless, from the beginning, this was a trap to kill the Black Cavalry. And you were the one responsible for luring the Black Cavalry into the trap. What? Colin. How can you think that? Charles's face was full of shock and grievance. Then, he put on a look of righteous indignation. Colin, don't forget what kind of blood feud there is between me and the giant demons. Every day, I think about attacking the giant demon royal city and burning it to the ground. How can I help them? Colin watched Charles's performance with a smile. It was as if he had returned to that banquet in Ice Stone City a year ago. At that time, this movie king had almost fooled all the nobles of the northern frontier. Do you know when you were exposed? Chapter 197. Lying was an exceedingly exciting game. Gambling, war, politics, these were all things that people flocked to, and all of them required excellent lying skills. A good liar would be able to come up with a flawless lie without batting an eyelid. It would be so easy to come up with a perfect lie that people would be confused and feel as if they had been deceived for a lifetime. They might even become addicted to it and want to do it again after falling for it once. This kind of liar was usually respectfully called a master, or even an even more prestigious title, but those who were not skilled would be full of flaws and make people laugh. Actually, compared to lying, exposing a lie was also a very interesting thing. Especially when the liar was still trying to put up a final struggle. Colin now experienced this kind of joy. Although he had already seen through it, he was still willing to provide a stage for Charles to perform. Pretend, continue pretending. Colin, what do you mean by this? What did I reveal? Are you suspecting that I conspired with the great demons to scheme against you? Charles's expression and tone were just right. In a simple sentence, he conveyed astonishment, shock, grievance, and all kinds of complicated emotions. Colin smiled as he leaned against the fence and enjoyed Charles's performance. He said leisurely, you said before that this operation has already received the approval of the Duke of St. Hilda. The Duke even promised that as long as I send troops to attack the great demon city, he will marry Vera to me. Yes. Charles immediately nodded. Ha! Colin laughed coldly. Did you know? On the third day after we left Ice Stone City, the Duke of St. Hilda publicly appeared. He first announced that Marquis Dawson, Earl Oman, and the others were traitors and ordered the Golden Lion army to attack Ironforge City. Then, he received the envoys sent by the various lords to chilly Winter City. Even that brat from the Lamba family was received, but he did not receive the envoy from Ice Stone City. And this envoy is the one I sent to ask for the Duke's hand in marriage. He has been waiting in chilly Winter City for more than 2 months. Charles's expression didn't change. In fact, he even revealed a similarly puzzled expression. After thinking for a moment, he explained, Colin, I believe that father isn't purposely targeting Ice Stone City. Instead, he wants to wait until you've successfully taken down the giant demon royal city before rewarding you and marrying Vera to you. Is that so? Colin actually nodded seriously. That makes sense. Just as Charles secretly heaved a sigh of relief, he heard Colin ask, then, how do you explain the timing of the trolls' attack? When will the trolls attack? Charles looked confused, as if he didn't understand what Colin meant. Yes. If I remember correctly, you arrived at Ice Stone City on the March 26th. Seeing Charles nod, Colin chuckled and continued, but the great demon city sent troops on the 23rd of March. Even if you received the news the moment the great demon city sent troops, how did you get to Ice Stone City from Howling Wind Castle in 3 short days? Could it be that you can fly? Or did you receive the news before the great demon city sent troops? Hearing this, Charles's heart suddenly sped up, but his expression did not change. Colin, did you make a mistake about the timing of the trolls' attack? Seeing that Charles was still stubbornly resisting, Colin shook his head with a smile. He had seen the great demon army move, with his own eyes through the eyes of the blood slaves, but Charles had appeared in Ice Stone City in 3 short days and even brought news of the great demon city's attack. At that time, he had concluded that there was something wrong with this Charles. Did I get it wrong? Then tell me, when exactly did the great demon city send troops? Colin chuckled as he looked at Charles and reminded him, however, you better think carefully before you speak. There are still many great demon captives in Howling Wind Castle. If your timing is different from what they said, then it will be difficult to deal with. Since he had said this much, Charles did not argue anymore. He slowly lowered his head and let the shadow cover his entire face. He did not speak anymore. The cold wind whistled and blew snowflakes into the watchtower, causing the already cold atmosphere to seem to drop by a few degrees. Colin looked at the silent Charles and suddenly sighed. He asked, if my guess is correct, the great demon city should have already told you the truth about the terrible defeat at the northern frontier at the beginning of last year, right? Charles did not answer. Just when Colin thought that the other party was not going to pay attention to him, Charles finally spoke, yes. His voice became as cold as frost, and the cold air that came out was even lower than the temperature of the sky ice field at this time. So, you have a grudge against the Duke of St. Hilda and decided to take this opportunity to take revenge on the northern frontier? Yes. Charles raised his head again, and his eyes flashed with undisguised hatred. My good father treats everyone as his tools, his chess pieces. In order to achieve his goal, he will not hesitate to abandon us. 200,000 northern frontier soldiers, hundreds of northern frontier lords, and countless people who died in the northern frontier due to war and famine, are insignificant in his eyes. As for me, Adams, Vera, Uncle Garcia, and of course, you, Colin. In his eyes, we are worthless. Tell me, what qualifications does such a person have to become the Lord of the Northern Frontier? What qualifications does he have to obtain our loyalty? This is the reason for your betrayal? Colin looked at Charles coldly. What is the difference between you now and the Duke of St. Hilda? You colluded with the trolls, framed your own people, and plunged the northern frontier into greater chaos. You are nothing but an ambitious person who only cares about your own interests. Don't put on a face of justice. Charles laughed and did not care about Colin's sarcasm. Instead, he advised, Colin, it is not too late to regret it now. I can help you put in a few good words in front of Mr. Kong. I think he will be willing to accept your loyalty. Colin laughed and mocked, do you really think that the schemer of the St. Thean family will win? Charles shook his head. Before the dust settles, no one dares to say that they will win. However, I do not want to live in the shadow of the Duke of St. Hilda anymore. What about you? Colin, since you know what he has done, why do you continue to work for him? I am not working for him. Then what is it for? Colin pointed below. Under the moonlight, a group of black cavalry soldiers could be seen patrolling. Black cavalry? Oh, I understand. Charles suddenly understood. The Black Cavalry, which was established by Marquis Garcia, grew up in bloody battles with the trolls. The hatred for the trolls had been completely integrated into the soul of this army. If Colin chose to make peace with the trolls, then he would completely lose the morale of the Black Cavalry. Even if the Black Cavalry were willing to continue to fight for him under the oath, they would not be able to maintain their invincible combat power. What's more, Colin wanted to marry Vera. If the St. Thean family ruled the northern frontier, then Vera would completely lose her detached status. Moreover, an important helper of the St. Thean family, the Oman family, had a grudge against Colin. In short, unless it was a last resort, Colin would never seek refuge with the St. Thean family. Seeing that he could not persuade Colin, Charles said helplessly, well, then I hope you can survive the whirlpool of the northern frontier. The northern frontier? There is no hurry. Let them fight for a while. Let me taste the feast that the trolls have prepared for me first. Charles was stunned, and then he said in disbelief, do you still want to continue to attack the trolls' city? Colin showed an inscrutable smile. Yes, I am already here. Chapter 198. In the whistling northern wind, the falling snow dyed the world a vast expanse of white. An army of trolls was moving forward with great difficulty in the snow. The enormous and bloated army stretched for more than 10 kilometers. From above, it looked like a black python was moving forward. However, there were tiny ants around this giant python. These ants were the Black Cavalry sentries. They were insignificant compared to the enormous army of trolls. It was as if the python could crush these ants to death with a casual movement of its body. But the one who was truly nervous was the giant python. Prince Okamoto narrowed his eyes as he sized up the Black Cavalry sentries. His heart was filled with anxiety and even fear. He didn't know that the Black Cavalry sentries had appeared. Were they just Colin's eyes behind him out of habit, or was the Black Cavalry's main force nearby? If the original plan had been carried out smoothly, the Black Cavalry should already be on their way to the Troll Kingdom. And he could have led his 100,000 army south to turn back and occupy the 3 forts along the snowy mountain range, completely cutting off the Black Cavalry's path of retreat. But now, Prince Okamoto was somewhat uncertain. Could it be that Colin had seen through this trap? In his anxiety, Prince Okamoto sent out several groups of sentries in an attempt to scout the surrounding situation. But the moment these sentries were sent out, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. They never returned, and there was no trace of them. This situation left Prince Okamoto, who didn't have much experience in leading armies, somewhat dumbfounded. Only now did he realize how great the difference between a real army and an armchair strategist was. The young southern prince couldn't help but have a thought. Was he going to follow in his father's footsteps? 2 days quickly passed while Prince Okamoto was filled with doubts. In these 2 days, the Black Cavalry's scouts surrounded the giant demon army. Whenever the giant demons tried to attack, they would immediately scatter. However, not long after, they would appear again. They were like flies that could not be chased away. At first, the troll soldiers were very nervous, but as time passed, they seemed to have gotten used to the swarm of flies around them. Anyway, these flies don't bite. So what if they follow? However, on the third day, the black cavalry sentinel cavalry that had been following them from time to time suddenly disappeared without a trace. The trolls couldn't get used to this. The young Prince Okamoto didn't notice the danger at the first moment. Fortunately, there were some experienced troll generals in the troll army. When they noticed the abnormal behavior of the black cavalry scouts, they immediately sent someone to report to Prince Okamoto, reminding him that the main force of the black cavalry would be arriving soon. Only then did Prince Okamoto realize that the situation was far from good. He hurriedly ordered the troops to gather and prepare to face the enemy. However, the reaction of this large and bloated troll army was despairingly slow. It couldn't be helped. Prince Okamoto was leading a decoy army. Most of them were newly recruited soldiers. It was impossible to expect them to react quickly on the battlefield. However, the black cavalry wouldn't give the trolls any time to react. When the snowflakes began to spread in the distance, the sound of hooves could be heard. The troll generals felt the earth tremble and hurriedly shouted at the top of their lungs. They had the soldiers raise their shields and spears to protect the army. Unfortunately, the troll army, which was made up of a large number of new troll soldiers, still revealed many fatal weaknesses before the battle. Their formations were not in order, and they lacked basic coordination. Chaos began to spread from the flanks of the troll army like a plague. For a moment, all sorts of chaotic and panicked voices gathered together, causing the troll army to be unable to get into the rhythm of battle. In truth, the most panicked person at this moment wasn't the troll soldiers, but the commander of the troll army, Prince Okamoto. This troll demon prince, who had once thought highly of himself and believed that he could also devise strategies on the battlefield and determine victory from 1,000 miles away, was now panicking. Calmness in the face of battle and calmness in command had all disappeared from Prince Okamoto's mind. The mental preparations he had made before the battle were of no use at all. Prince Okamoto was at a loss when he heard all sorts of requests for orders. At this moment, Prince Okamoto finally understood that he wasn't a qualified commander. Even his father, whom he had always looked down on, was probably much stronger than him. Of course, this wasn't strange. Prince Okamoto was indeed intelligent, and he was adept at scheming and plotting, but these weren't necessary conditions to determine victory on the battlefield. In short, the troll army's performance in this sudden battle was indescribably terrible. Fortunately, the troll army still had the advantage in numbers. The recruits didn't immediately collapse when they saw their endless comrades. The black guards came quickly, accompanied by the thunder-like sound of horse hooves. Troop after troop of black armored cavalry rode over. But when they got close, they changed direction slightly and streaked past the troll army's flank. The buzzing of bowstrings immediately sounded, and the rain of arrows was like a swarm of locusts that filled the sky, flying towards the trolls in a black mass. Raise your shields. Don't move. Archers, get ready. Spear throwers, get ready. Voices rose and fell among the troll army, but they were quickly drowned out by the rumbling of hooves. Arrows fell like rain, and the sound of flesh being pierced rang out. Swathes of troll soldiers fell to the ground, their screams endless. There was no war of words, no scheming and no scheming. The black cavalry used the most direct and violent method to open the curtains to the battle. There was almost no pause in the wave of attacks. Thousands of black cavalry formed several ranks, galloping past the troll army's flank. Arrows constantly rose into the sky, turning into a continuous spring rain that rained down on the troll army's heads. The troll army also paid a heavy price for the chaos from before. They didn't raise their shields in time, and their shields weren't tight enough. The troll soldiers gathered together were like wheat fields blown by a gust of wind, falling one by one. Blood flowed freely, dyeing the ground beneath their feet red. After thousands of black cavalry galloped past, a clear red line was drawn across the troll army's flank. Countless corpses lay there, and the injured soldiers howled. The troll soldiers who were lucky enough to be unharmed gripped their shields tightly, trembling as they held them above their heads. But this was only the beginning. Once the curtains to the battle had been drawn, it wouldn't stop so easily. The Black Cavalry's attack was meant to be a distraction. After all, Colin wasn't sure if this troll army that had returned from the south was really a diversion. But after the short and cruel first clash, Colin was 80% sure that the last elite army of the Troll Empire wasn't here. But he wasn't impatient. In his opinion, the fate of this bloated and weak troll army was already decided. The only thing he needed to pay attention to was how to take down the enemy with as few casualties as possible. At this moment, the Black Cavalry had already circled back, and once again used the unique method of cavalry to quickly sweep past the troll army's flank, repeating everything that had happened before. This scene was like a replay of the bloody battle on the icy plains a year ago. Prince Okamoto looked at the Black Cavalry that were recklessly slaughtering the troll army. He racked his brains, but he couldn't find a way to break out of this situation. The endless screams in his ears made Prince Okamoto even more vexed. What was worse was that the generals under him were looking at him with eyes full of distrust. Thus, the angry Prince Okamoto gave a foolish order. Chapter 199. Actually, Prince Okamoto's troll army wasn't completely without elites. If an army made up entirely of new recruits was sent south to attack the northern frontier, it would be Prince Okamoto's fault if even half of the 100,000-strong army was left after they passed through the 1,000-mile ice plains. In order to successfully block the Black Cavalry's retreat, Prince Okamoto still had 30,000 elites with decent fighting strength under his command. Among them, the strongest were the 3,000 Wolf Cavalry. This was the last organized Wolf Cavalry unit of the Troll Empire. If it wasn't for the fact that cavalry wasn't very useful in defending a city, the Troll Emperor probably wouldn't be willing to give this last bit of strength to Prince Okamoto. Faced with the menacing Black Cavalry, Prince Okamoto staked everything on this one throw and ordered the 3,000 Wolf Cavalry to attack the Black Cavalry with the infantry. If the Troll army was elite enough, this wouldn't be a ridiculous military order. However, Prince Okamoto didn't know how big the gap was between his Wolf Cavalry and the Black Cavalry that was truly unstoppable on the sky ice plains. The 3,000 Wolf Cavalry were originally deployed on the right flank of the Central Army in order to guard against enemy attacks. Now that they were deployed from the flank, it didn't cause much chaos. However, when Colin saw the Wolf Cavalry attack from afar, his eyes lit up. He had already learned from Charles that the commander of this troll army was his old acquaintance, Prince Okamoto. However, he didn't expect this young troll prince to be so impatient. Without waiting for Colin's order, Knight Roger, who was already familiar with how to deal with the Wolf Cavalry, immediately led his army to retreat, far away from the flank of the troll army. The Black Cavalry officers had already practiced with Marquis Garcia countless times on how to break through the coordination of the troll infantry and cavalry. The method was simple. If they had a large number of troops, the best choice was to break through the enemy's cavalry. If they didn't have enough troops, the most suitable tactic was to temporarily avoid the enemy's cavalry and lure them away from the infantry formation. Then, depending on the situation, they would attack. Therefore, the moment Knight Roger saw the Wolf Riders, he immediately ordered his subordinates to turn around. A short syllable sounded from the bugle, which was a signal for temporary retreat. At this moment, the flanks of the troll army were already covered in dust. The Wolf Cavalry was like a thick arm that suddenly stretched out from the troll army and followed closely behind the Black Cavalry. In a split second, a muffled boom exploded on the battlefield. The Black Cavalry's tail was still caught by the Wolf Cavalry. Amidst the neighing of the warhorses, the warriors of the Black Cavalry raised their weapons one after another, brandishing their blades against each other. Then, countless figures screamed as they were cut down from their horses. At this moment, the Troll Wolf Cavalry were also attacked by an extremely fierce rain of arrows. The troll wolf cavalry that were charging forward with their blades covering their heads didn't have time to raise their shields and fell from their horses. In the blink of an eye, this sudden and intense collision ended. Only lumps of flesh and blood were left on the ground, which were quickly covered up by the troll infantry that swarmed over. These wolf cavalry were indeed elites. In this charge, they had almost completely crushed the black cavalry's little tail, causing the black cavalry to suffer the most damage since the start of the battle. This kind of result made the trolls that had been holding back their anger all this time to howl in excitement. The flowing blood and flying limbs aroused their ferocity even more. Thus, they all let out howls that sounded like the wails of ghosts and howls of wolves as they chased after the black guards. At this moment, Prince Okamoto, who was watching the battle from the rear, also waved his fist fiercely, as if venting all the anger he had suffered over the past few days. It was a pity that this young prince couldn't see the situation on the battlefield clearly. When he ordered his subordinates to continue fighting the enemy without caring about anything else, he pushed this army step by step into the abyss of destruction. Colin was overjoyed when he saw the wolf cavalry continue their pursuit and widen the distance between them and the infantry army. He had originally planned to use the tactic of constant harassment to slowly drag the troll army to death along the way. But now, he had found a rare opportunity. In truth, this was the true difference between a talented general and a mediocre one. In the face of a chaotic and ever-changing battlefield, the mediocre would only be at a loss and make one stupid move after another. A true general, on the other hand, could grasp the fleeting opportunity and make the most correct decision. This step seemed simple, but it required a great deal of courage, boldness, and a keen sense of the battlefield. Colin did not let down Knight Bliss and Marquis Garcia's evaluation of him. This is a man born for the battlefield. Woo! A long bugle call sounded, and Colin gave the order to attack. Squads of black cavalry changed directions once more, and the arrows in the sky suddenly became denser. Amidst the shouts of men and the neighs of horses, the situation on the battlefield changed once more. The troll demon wolf cavalry vainly chased after the enemy, only to find that the black cavalry had appeared on both sides of them at some point. The black cavalry in front of them parted like the tide. Just as the leader of the wolf cavalry was wondering where to go, the black tide in front of them dispersed, and a new wave of monstrous waves came. A group of heavy cavalry crashed into them. The leader of the wolf cavalry was scared out of his wits, and only then did he realize that he had chased too far. But now, it was impossible for him to stop the wolf cavalry even if he wanted to. It would take a lot of effort for the charging wolf riders to change direction, let alone stop and turn around. Under the influence of inertia, the 3,000 wolf cavalry crashed into the black cavalry's heavy cavalry. Boom! 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 In an instant, countless wolf cavalry were knocked to the ground, and then trampled to pieces. The werewolf cavalry was already at the end of their rope, and they were wearing light armor. Unprepared, they actually collided head-on with the heavily armored cavalry of the Black Guards. The scene was so tragic that it was unbearable to watch. The Black Cavalry's light cavalry that were patrolling the area also took the opportunity to surround them like a pack of wolves. At this moment, life was as fragile as withered grass. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from the world along with the blood that filled the sky. The Black Cavalry had used flexible tactics and powerful combat strength to teach the trolls a bloody lesson, letting them know who was the true ruler of this icy plain. The 3,000 wolf cavalry crumbled in an instant. The wolf cavalry that had fallen behind desperately tried to change directions, trying to charge back so that the infantry behind them could receive them. However, such a sudden change in direction without any preparation was an extremely difficult movement for a dire wolf that was sprinting at full speed. In the chaos, the wolf cavalry's formation was completely torn apart, and they were utterly defeated. Prince Okamoto, who had witnessed all of this, also experienced the feeling of falling from heaven to hell in an instant. In his anger and fear, he completely lost his sense of propriety and crazily ordered the infantry army to go and rescue the scattered wolf cavalry. And this order also completely destroyed the last shred of hope for the troll army. Chapter 200. Veterans who had been on the battlefield knew that defeat was not a slow process, but something that happened in an instant. It was not necessary to kill the enemy one by one to obtain victory. In fact, as long as the enemy's organization was destroyed, defeat would naturally occur. This was what it meant to be defeated like a landslide. Experienced generals knew that once the front line was defeated, sending reinforcements seemed correct, but it was actually the stupidest decision. This was because the defeated front line would break the formation of the reinforcements, resulting in an avalanche of deaths. This was also why feigning defeat to lure the enemy was rarely seen in reality. Unless one had enough confidence in their commanding ability and the soldiers under their command, ordinary generals would not dare to use such a strategy. This was because if they were not careful, feigning defeat would become a true defeat. Thus, when Colin saw the troll infantry's movements, he almost laughed out loud. That Prince Okamoto seemed to be a smart person. How did he become so stupid on the battlefield? This was actually nothing strange. Zhao Kuo was also well versed in military books. When it came to the art of war, even Lien Pe admitted defeat. Before Ma Su was defeated, he was also extremely intelligent and was highly regarded by Zhuge Liang. But the real battlefield was a cruel demon-revealing mirror. Whether one was a man or a ghost, whether one was talented or not, they would all know once they tried. At this time, Colin even wondered if his original plan had been too cautious. The current situation on the battlefield was not out of Colin's expectations. The wolf cavalry that had fled back had completely broken the formation of the infantry. Even if many troll generals saw the problem, it was too late to stop the chaos from happening. This was the perfect embodiment of a general being useless and exhausting an army to death. Seeing this situation, Colin, who was charging at the front, immediately raised the blade of judgment above his head and urged his warhorse to gallop. At the same time, he roared, "Kill, kill!" The 800 heavy cavalry behind him also roared in unison, "Kill, kill, kill!" Roars brimming with killing intent spread throughout the army, shaking the surroundings and shooting straight into the clouds. For a time, it even covered the rumbling of horse hooves. The ferocious heavy cavalry of the black cavalry were like fast-moving steel monsters. They swarmed forward and charged towards the formation of the giant demon army. The scattered wolf riders seemed to have become the vanguard of the black cavalry, helping them break the formation of the troll army. In their panic, the troll infantry at the front were unable to form a stable shield formation. The archers at the back fired a few arrows, but they were unable to deal much damage to the heavy cavalry. Before the enemy had even arrived, the troll army was already terrified. Many troll soldiers simply fled with the wolf riders. As panic spread, the trolls' vanguard completely lost their formation. Rumble. Following a resounding boom, the heavy cavalry of the black cavalry had already charged into the formation of the troll army along with their horses. Countless troll soldiers were sent flying like puppets by the force of the impact, which weighed several tons. The sound of bones breaking could be heard, and blood splattered everywhere, making the scene particularly horrifying. The black cavalry's heavy cavalry were like ferocious monsters of steel. They stabbed viciously into the flanks of the troll army and quickly advanced deeper into the forest. Rows of troll soldiers were trampled like scarecrows by the heavy cavalry. Blood splattered everywhere as the troll soldiers either had their bones broken or their stomachs punctured. Everywhere the black cavalry passed, only a bloody and terrifying mess was left behind. Such a scene made people feel as if they had arrived in hell. It was as if the scene from a year ago was repeated once again. Black cavalry used a bloody storm to firmly engrave this nightmarish memory in the troll's mind. Colin had also personally proven that numbers were not the key to victory on the battlefield. 800 cavalrymen could indeed defeat an army of 100,000. At this point, the battle had already lost all suspense. The Black Cavalry's light cavalry immediately swarmed through the wide gap created by the heavy cavalry, chasing after the troll soldiers who were already focused on fleeing. The sound of hooves, battle cries, screams, and wails, everything within a dozen kilometers was covered in the sonata of war. At this point, there was no troll general who could stop the collapse of the troll army. Anything that stood in the way of the Black Cavalry's iron hooves would be drowned by this black flood. Prince Okamoto stared blankly at all of this, as if he had been completely struck dumb. He could not understand how this battle had suddenly turned out like this. An army of 100,000, an army of 100,000. How could they be so weak in front of the Black Cavalry, so easily defeated? At this moment, Prince Okamoto suddenly understood why his father had been so pathetic in front of Marquis Garcia. It seemed that he really could not be blamed. The Black Cavalry, could it be that he was destined to be a nightmare that the troll would never be able to escape? At this moment, all of Prince Okamoto's lofty aspirations, glory, and wealth seemed to have left him. Disheartened, he suddenly pulled out the long sword in his hand and was about to slash his own neck. "Your Highness! You can't die yet." The personal guard beside him snatched the sword from Prince Okamoto's hand and roared at the top of his lungs. "Your Highness! You have always said that death is the release of a coward, and that enduring humiliation and seeking revenge is the decision of a hero." Prince Okamoto was stunned. The screams by his ears seemed to have faded away, and the bloody scene before him became blurry. At this moment, he recalled the scene of him groveling in front of the Duke of St. Hilda and begging for peace in chilly winter. Suddenly, Prince Okamoto felt relieved. Yes, he had already knelt once. So what if he knelt again? Hence, Prince Okamoto threw away the long sword in his hand, adjusted his military uniform, and took the flag from the flag-bearer. Then, he held his head high and looked in the direction of the Black Cavalry. Unfortunately, the general's impassioned speech was unable to reverse the situation of the defeated troll army. At this moment, the troll army was unable to organize any effective resistance. The Black Cavalry had already spread to the heart of the troll army. In their despair, most of the troll soldiers only cared about fleeing, but how could they escape the cavalry's pursuit? More troll soldiers knelt and surrendered, but they seemed to have forgotten how the Black Cavalry had treated the troll soldiers who surrendered. However, to reduce unnecessary resistance, Colin still ordered for the troll captives to be taken in. Leaving his subordinates to clean up the battlefield and clean up the mess, Colin led a team of personal guards in the direction of the troll commander's flag. Without waiting for Colin to reach him, Prince Okamoto swiftly dismounted from his horse and walked briskly with the commander's flag in his hand. Then, he suddenly threw the commander's flag to the ground and laid his entire body on it. His 5 limbs were prostrated on the ground, forming a mu character. He shouted loudly, "Great Viscount Angli, your most loyal servant greets you." Chapter 201. Night fell. The Black Cavalry set up camp on the spot. Bonfires burned, dispersing the cold air and the smell of blood. Groups of troll captives were detained in batches and kept under strict watch. The seized supplies were also being cleaned up. In the temporary command post in the center of the camp, Colin took a roasted lamb leg from a guard and started munching on it. After finishing the meat, he gulped down a pot of sheep blood before letting out a comfortable burp. Prince Okamoto, who was starving, swallowed his saliva when he saw this. Unfortunately, Colin didn't prepare dinner for Prince Okamoto. He wiped his mouth with a napkin and said, "Okamoto, I've always treated you as a friend, but I didn't expect you to scheme against me." Hearing Colin's pretentious words, Prince Okamoto was moved to tears, as if he was deeply moved. At the same time, he shook his head frantically, as if he had been greatly wronged. "Lord Viscounts, it's my honor to be your friend. I cherish this friendship very much. But please believe me, I was forced to do this because I had no other choice. It was all Mr. Kwong's scheme from the St. Thean family. Even His Majesty was bewitched by him. I was only following orders. I had no choice. Colin lazily leaned against the back of the chair. While scoring the performance of the movie king in front of him in his heart, he asked with a smile, "What's wrong with you?" He then asked with a smile, "How much do you know about Mr. Kwong's plans?" "I know about his arrangements in the Troll Empire. As for the northern frontier, I know very little." "Then tell me what you know." "Yes, yes." Prince Okamoto nodded and began to narrate. Sure enough, it was just as Colin had guessed. The giant demon empire had gathered all sorts of forces, and they had a total of 80,000 soldiers that could fight. However, they weren't prepared to invest all of their resources into the whirlpool at the northern frontier. If they messed up, the entire Troll Empire would be in danger of falling apart. And to be honest, the current giant demon empire couldn't afford such a huge military expenditure. Therefore, Mr. Chang asked them to target Colin, or more accurately, the Black Cavalry in Colin's hands. This army could be said to be the nightmare of the Troll Empire. Every troll dreamed of having that black lion flag disappear from the world forever. Thus, the two sides came to an agreement. The giant demon empire sent out 30,000 regular soldiers and 70,000 new recruits to form a mighty expeditionary army of 100,000. They pretended that they were going south to invade the northern frontier. Then, Mr. Cinderella instigated Charles St. Silda to betray the great demon empire and had him report to Ice Stone City, convincing Colin to take advantage of the fact that the great demon empire was empty to ambush the great demon empire. But in reality, there were still 50,000 elite soldiers hidden in the great demon empire, waiting for Colin to charge in unprepared and bleed. At the same time, the army heading south to invade the northern frontier would turn back halfway and take control of the three forts along the snowy mountain range, completely cutting off the Black Cavalry's escape route. This way, they would be able to kill this terrifying cavalry that could influence the situation between the northern frontier and the Troll Empire within the Great Demon Empire. After listening to Prince Okamoto's explanation, Colin's expression was indifferent, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry. A moment later, he asked again, "How much do you know about Mr. Chang's plans on the northern frontier?" "I only know that Mr. Chang has already instigated the Dawson and Oman families to betray him. They will be the main force against the Golden Lion Army." "Only against the Golden Lion Army?" Prince Okamoto stared blankly for a moment before saying, "My lord, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but the House of St. Hilda on the northern frontier can only rely on the Golden Lion Army. The other lords aren't that strong and won't have much of an impact on the overall situation. Moreover, these people are fence-sitters and might not be willing to risk their lives for the House of St. Hilda. Of course, if the Black Cavalry in your hands is still on the northern frontier, they will definitely be a force to be reckoned with. That's why Mr. Chang made this plan in the first place." Colin shook his head. "No, I'm talking about the San Lorenzo family. If the St. Thean family wants to take over the northern frontier, will the royal family just sit by and watch?" "The royal family?" Prince Okamoto frowned. After thinking for a moment, he said in an uncertain tone, "My lord Viscounts, from what I know of Mr. Chang's plan, he didn't make any arrangements against the San Lorenzo family. It's as if he's certain that the San Lorenzo family will just sit by and watch the chaos on the northern frontier." "Oh." Colin frowned and asked doubtfully, "But you should know about the grudge between the San Lorenzo family and the St. Thean family, right?" "Yes, I know. Back then, the St. Thean family had an inquisitor, who personally cut off the head of the San Lorenzo family's Dark Emperor. This led to the tragic fate of the St. Thean family. Since you know about this, then you should also understand that although it was the House of St. Hilda that destroyed the St. Thean family's army, the real mastermind behind the scenes is probably the San Lorenzo family. So, how could Mr. Chang not take precautions against the San Lorenzo family when he plans to take over the northern frontier?" "My lord Viscounts, I really don't know about this." Prince Okamoto said with a bitter face, "Mr. Chang is only using us. It's not to the point where he trusts us wholeheartedly. Colin rubbed between his eyebrows and fell into deep thought. Seeing this, Prince Okamoto was afraid that Viscounts would think that he was hiding something. After thinking hard for a moment, he hurriedly added, "My Lord Viscounts, I suddenly thought of something that might be of help to you." "Speak." "Mr. Chang is actually a powerful mage, and he has close ties with the upper echelons of the Yule Parliament. I'm guessing that the mages are involved in the chaos on the northern frontier. Perhaps this is his way of dealing with the San Lorenzo family." Mage? Colin's brows were still tightly knitted. He did not think that the Yule Parliament's mages had the ability to stop the San Lorenzo family from intervening in the battle on the northern frontier. Although the mages' forbidden spells were extremely powerful, the price they had to pay was equally frightening. Colin did not believe that the high-ranked mages would be willing to sacrifice their lives to help the St. Thean family take over the northern frontier. Moreover, forbidden spells were like nuclear weapons, but nuclear weapons were only a deterrent when they were ready to be fired. Once they were fired, the threat would not be as great, because what followed would be a situation where one side would fight to the death. Therefore, if the mages wanted to interfere in the situation on the northern frontier, they could only rely on conventional means. But if they used conventional means, how could the Yule Parliament influence the decision of the San Lorenzo family? Colin shook his head and decided not to think about this for now. After all, he had too little information and could not make an accurate judgment. Then, he looked at Prince Okamoto with an unfathomable smile and said calmly, "You're right. Okamoto, I'm going to be a guest at the Troll King's city, so I need you to help me send an invitation to your Troll King." Prince Okamoto stared blankly at Colin for a long time, wondering if he had heard wrongly. He had already told Colin that the Troll King's city was a trap, and that there were 50,000 elite troops hidden inside. Why did he still want to be a guest? But looking at Colin's serious expression, Prince Okamoto knew that he had not heard wrongly. Confused, he did not dare to ask any more questions, and could only nod. "Yes, I'm willing to serve you." Chapter 202. The Troll Palace was located in the northwest corner of the capital. It was surrounded by lakes, and the palace was built on an island in the center of the Emerald Lake. The Emerald Lake was the most famous hot spring in the Troll capital. It was said that the Troll Emperor built the new capital here because of this rare hot spring. In the snowy sky ice plains, a hot spring like this was a miracle. The trolls naturally thought of it as a gift from the White Wolf war god and built the palace in the center of the Emerald Lake. Before the first light of dawn could spread to every corner of the capital, the Troll Emperor Modo II held an imperial meeting. This emperor was the most hard-working one in the history of the Troll Empire. Every time he held a meeting, it would be when the sun had just risen. This was undoubtedly torture for the troll ministers. However, facing Modo II, who was determined to revive the empire, the troll ministers had no choice but to endure it. Unfortunately, no matter how hardworking Modo II was, he could not stop the troll empire from falling under his rule. Sometimes, the fate of an empire could not be changed by the efforts of one or two people. The topic of this imperial meeting was very clear: black cavalry. The trolls had already weaved a net, but the prey had yet to arrive. As time went on, the troll ministers could not help but start to get impatient. Modo II was already over 50 years old, but his spirit was still very strong. His body was strong and straight, and he looked like a soldier sitting on the throne. In fact, this troll emperor had indeed joined the army before. He had even fought with Marquis Garcia before. Of course, it was not appropriate to say that he had fought with Marquis Garcia before. More accurately, he had been taught a lesson by Marquis Garcia. However, this was nothing to be ashamed of. The generals of the Troll Empire who had not been taught a lesson by Marquis Garcia did not even have the right to go to the front lines. Because he had been traumatized by the Black Cavalry, this Troll Emperor placed great importance on this assassination mission. As long as the Black Cavalry was still alive, Modo II would not be able to sleep in peace. Most of the troll nobles also believed that if they could really make the name of black cavalry disappear into history, then the troll empire's revival would be just around the corner. There was a huge military map in the meeting hall. The black arrow indicated that the black cavalry was occupying the Howling Wind Castle. However, this status had not been updated for more than 10 days. Why was the black cavalry still in the Howling Wind Castle? Why was he not attacking the troll capital? Did they see through this plan? All sorts of thoughts swirled in the minds of the troll nobles, and the atmosphere became somewhat stifling. Finally, it was Moto II who broke the awkward silence. Is there still no movement from the Black Guards? The military affairs minister's face stiffened as he carefully replied, "Yes, Your Majesty." The sentries at the front lines still did not see them. Moto II. The military minister was troubled by Moto II's question. He looked pleadingly at the two princes at the front. Among the four princes of the Troll Empire, Northern Prince Otto was injured in a duel with the Duke of St. Hilda and was recuperating in the extreme north. Southern Prince Okamoto led his troops to the south. Only Eastern Prince Abbas and Western Prince Malu were left in the meeting hall. Prince Abbas was a middle-aged troll with an elegant demeanor. He liked human culture, clothing, etiquette, and of course, human beauties. If one did not look at his ferocious face in the eyes of humans, Prince Abbas would be no different from an elegant and dignified human noble. Prince Abbas was a staunch peacemaker of the Troll Empire. To him, it was unwise to be enemies with the northern frontier. Only by peaceful coexistence and trade with the northern frontier could the Troll Empire have hope of revival. Last year, Prince Okamoto went to chilly Winterfell to ask for peace and arranged a marriage. Prince Abbas praised him greatly. He felt that this was the right way for the Troll Empire and the northern frontier to coexist. On the other hand, the Western Prince, Morway, was the exact opposite. He was a staunch war hawk. Prince Malu was tall and muscular. His dark green skin was covered with thick hair, and he looked like a green-skinned gorilla. As for his attire, it was hard to describe. His entire body was covered in jewels of various colors. At first glance, he did indeed look like a jewel, but it was too much. This kind of attire revealed Prince Malvi's extremely tacky taste. Prince Morway had a pair of triangular eyes, and the ferocious look in his eyes made it seem like he didn't like anyone, especially Prince Abbas. In his opinion, a sissy like Prince Abbas was a disgrace to the trolls, not to mention his tendency to surrender. This made Prince Malvi want nothing more than to cut down this traitor of the trolls with his sword. Seeing the pleading gaze of the military affairs minister, Prince Malu said, "Your Majesty, I don't think there's a need to worry. The Black Cavalry is probably waiting for the Southern Army to move further away. That's why he's staying at the Howling Wind Fortress. What we have to do now is wait patiently." As soon as he finished speaking, Prince Abbas shook his head with a cold smile, as if he had heard something stupid. Prince Malu glared at him and said, "Abbas, what are you laughing at? Is there a problem with my words?" Prince Abbas took a step back and dodged the spit from Prince Morway's mouth. He said with a look of disgust. "Malu, have you thought about it? We only know that the Black Cavalry isn't heading north of the Howling Wind Fortress. What about south of the Howling Wind Fortress? Do you know what's going on there?" Prince Malu was speechless, but he soon shouted again, "What else can happen in the south?" Prince Abbas laughed disdainfully, looking at the time. Okamoto should be leading his army back according to the plan. What do you think will happen if the Black Cavalry continues to stay at the Howling Wind Fortress? Prince Malu frowned. "You're saying that the Black Cavalry is waiting for Okamoto's army to return? How is that possible? How could they know that Okamoto would return?" Prince Abbas sneered, "Do you think everyone is as stupid as you? I was strongly against this so-called plan to lure the enemy. If the enemy sees through it, we'll be in an extremely passive situation. Now that the Black Cavalry is occupying the Howling Wind Fortress and not continuing north, it's very likely that they already know that the Troll City is a trap. Hee, you want to lure the enemy, but you didn't expect the enemy to eat the bait and not step into your trap. Nonsense. Prince Malyu's face turned red. He wanted to refute, but he couldn't find a reason to do so. This was because most of the troll nobles had already begun to realize that the Black Cavalry's actions were too suspicious. Perhaps this plan to lure the enemy really did go wrong, as Prince Abbas said. These are just your guesses. What evidence do you have to prove that the Black Cavalry saw through our plan? Prince Malyu was still trying to put up a strong front. Prince Abbas laughed coldly, as if he couldn't be bothered to explain himself to this brute. Abbas. Modo too also spoke, his voice exceptionally hoarse. However, before this troll emperor could continue, a guard quickly walked into the meeting hall and reported loudly, "Your Majesty, His Highness Prince Okamoto is outside the palace, requesting an audience." Okamoto. Why is he back? What's wrong with the army going south? Could it be that the Black Guards have really seen through our plan? For a moment, the meeting hall was in chaos. Chapter 203. When Prince Okamoto walked into the meeting hall, everyone quieted down. All eyes were on Prince Okamoto as if they were waiting for the judgment of fate. King Modo too was still sitting with a straight back and a calm expression on his face. However, if one looked closely, they would see that his hands were trembling. It was obvious that the Troll Emperor was not as calm as he appeared to be. After patiently waiting for Prince Okamoto to bow, King Modo too finally asked the question in his mind, "Okamoto, why did you come back at this time? Where's your army?" Hearing this, Prince Okamoto knelt on the ground and said with a gloomy expression, "Your Majesty, I have failed to live up to your trust. The Black Guards have seen through our plan, and the 100,000 troops that went south have been completely annihilated." What? Modo too exclaimed. He could no longer maintain his composure as an emperor. He immediately jumped up from his throne and yelled, "What the hell are you talking about? You idiot! What happened? Where's my army? How long has it been? How could they all be wiped out? Also, what do you mean by the Black Cavalry saw through our plan? How did they see through it? Did someone leak the information? Tell me, tell me." Prince Okamoto prostrated himself on the ground and recounted the events of the previous battle. Then, he immediately shifted the blame. "Your Majesty, it's all because Charles betrayed us. He already told Colin about our plan, and that's why the Black Cavalry knew that the Troll King city was a trap. Colin Angeli also knew that my army was only an empty shell, and that's why he waited outside the Howling Wind Castle and ambushed us." Bulsh *T. Prince Malvi stepped forward and kicked Prince Okamoto to the ground. He yelled, "What empty shell? You had 100,000 soldiers under your command. 30,000 of them were elites, and 3,000 of them were wolf riders. Tell me, how did the Black Cavalry wipe out 100,000 soldiers in such a short amount of time?" "All right." Prince Abbas suddenly spoke. "If you encounter the Black Cavalry in the open, even if you have the advantage in numbers, who dares to say that they can escape unscathed? Do you dare, Morway?" The veins on Prince Malvi's forehead were throbbing. It was as if Prince Abbas's question had brought back some unpleasant memories. His breathing became heavier, and his face turned red. It was unknown whether it was because of anger or shame. "Abbas. Are you trying to absolve a defeated general? I don't mean to exonerate Okamoto. I just want to remind you that Okamoto is not the only one responsible for this fiasco. I reminded you back then that although Charles resented his father, he might not be willing to work for us sincerely. See, he's the one with the problem now." Cough, cough. At this moment, Modo Two's expression also became awkward because Prince Abbas' words made him feel awkward. After all, he agreed with Mr. Feng's plan to lure the enemy. However, not only did they fail to lure the Black Cavalry to attack the Troll King city, but they also lost an army. Now is not the time to find out who's responsible. The most important thing now is how to deal with the Black Cavalry in the Howling Wind Castle. Facing Moto II's question, Prince Abbas immediately said loudly, "Your Majesty, I still stand by my previous opinion, negotiate for peace." "Negotiate for peace my ass." Prince Malvi cursed again. "Abbas, you scum of the troll race. All you think about is negotiating for peace with the northern frontier. But why don't you think about it? How can humans and trolls coexist peacefully? Why not? Goblins, dwarves, and half-elves can do it. Why can't we trolls do it? The races you mentioned are weak enough that humans can tolerate them." Hee, Malvi, did you forget that Okamoto just reached a peace agreement with the Duke of St. Hilda not long ago? *T peace agreement. Prince Malvi's spit was almost on Prince Abbas's face. That's just because the Duke of St. Hilda needs time to solve his internal conflict. That's why he's willing to stop fighting with us. Once he's free, he won't let us go. That's just baseless speculation, enough. Moto II interrupted the two princes' argument again. "Malvi, since you don't agree with the peace agreement, what do you think we should do?" "Your Majesty, we don't actually have to do anything. The Black Cavalry will leave on its own," Prince Malvi said confidently. "Since the plan is leaked, the Black Cavalry will definitely know that there are 50,000 elite soldiers in the King's city. So, as long as Colin Angeli still has some sense, he won't send his precious cavalry to attack the King's city. Therefore, he will definitely retreat. Don't forget that the northern frontier is in a mess right now. Colin Angeli won't stay in the Howling Wind Castle for long." Prince Abbas sneered and asked, "What if the Black Cavalry comes to the Empire before retreating to the northern frontier?" Prince Malvi was speechless. Obviously, he was asked the right question. Right now, the last elite army of the Giant Demon Empire was gathered in the Giant Demon Royal City. If the Black Cavalry were to sweep through the surroundings of the Royal City and wreak havoc, the Giant Demon Empire would be helpless and heartbroken. As the nobles of the Giant Demon Empire were deep in thought, Prince Okamoto suddenly spoke again. "Your Majesty, Viscount Angli let me come back this time because he wanted me to send you a letter." "A letter?" King Moto was surprised. "You mean Colin Angeli wants to see me?" "Yes." Prince Okamoto took out a letter and handed it to King Moto. After a quick glance, Moto too raised his head again. He looked at the troll nobles with curious expressions and said, "I'm not sure what you're talking about. Colin Angeli wants to meet me outside the city. He wants to talk to me about peace." Prince Malvi immediately shouted, "Your Majesty! This must be a trap. Don't fall for it. Your Majesty, maybe Viscount Angeli really wants to negotiate with us. Don't miss such a good opportunity," Prince Abbas said. *T. Prince Malvi yelled again, "Abbas, you evil bastard! You want His Majesty to meet the enemy outside the city? What if something happens to His Majesty? Don't worry about that." King Moto waved the letter in his hand and explained, "Viscount Angli set the meeting location to be 5 kilometers away from the King's city. He also promised that the Black Cavalry will stay 10 kilometers away. Also, each side can only bring one guard to the meeting location." Prince Malvi thought for a while after hearing the suggestion, but he did not say anything. Before King Moto was about to agree, Prince Okamoto spoke again, "Your Majesty, I think this might be a great opportunity for us." "What opportunity?" King Moto's brow furrowed. He did not want to talk to this general who just lost 100,000 soldiers, but he was interested after hearing the word opportunity. Prince Okamoto raised his head, his eyes flashing with the flames of vengeance. He said in a deep voice, "Your Majesty, we can use this opportunity to kill Colin Angeli." Chapter 204. As Prince Okamoto's deep and firm voice echoed in the meeting hall, all the troll nobles were stunned for a second. King Moto too narrowed his eyes, and a terrifying light flashed in his eyes. He stared at Prince Okamoto, who was kneeling on the ground, and slowly asked in a deep voice, "How?" A hint of unconcealable joy suddenly appeared on Prince Okamoto's face as he said in a hurry, "Your Majesty, Viscount Angli saw through our plan and destroyed 100,000 soldiers. This achievement is enough for him to become a rising star after Marquis Garcia on the northern frontier. However, he should also know that the great Demon King's city cannot be conquered. This time, he invited you out of the city to meet him because he is young and ambitious. He wants to show off in front of you, Your Majesty." However, this Viscount Angeli forgot about his biggest weakness when he was so proud of himself. King Moto too had already walked to Prince Okamoto. He bowed slightly and asked in a hurry, "What weakness?" Prince Okamoto's eyes suddenly turned sharp, and he said in a cold tone, "He lacks high-rank warriors." "High-rank warriors?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Prince Okamoto continued, "I know everything about the Black Cavalry. This was an extremely frightening army, but what made it so frightening was that it had extremely high combat standards, extremely excellent weapons and equipment, and an extremely frightening will to fight. Of course, they also have a great commander. Marquis Garcia is a good commander, and Colin Angeli is also a great commander. However, the Black Cavalry has a weakness: they don't have many high-rank warriors." The troll nobles in the hall couldn't help but nod in agreement when they heard this. They were all familiar with the Black Cavalry. They also knew that high-rank warriors weren't that useful on a real battlefield. Unless they were at the level of a saint, a normal grade 5 or even grade 6 warrior wouldn't dare to face the charge of thousands of elite cavalry. Therefore, although the Black Cavalry didn't have many high-rank warriors, it still didn't stop them from becoming a nightmare for the troll nobles. Prince Okamoto continued, "According to the previous information, there are no grade 6 warriors in the Black Cavalry, but there are 2 grade 5 knights. However, in the Battle of Shadow Canyon, one of the grade 5 knights died, and the other one, Marquis Garcia, was captured by the East. Therefore, there are no grade 5 warriors in the Black Cavalry army that Viscount Angli took over. Also, I've asked around. The Angeli family was only a baron's family, and their strongest knight was only grade 3. Only Viscount Angli himself showed that he had the power of a grade 4 warrior in Silver Moon City." Hearing this, Moto too understood what Prince Okamoto meant. "You're saying that in this meeting, Colin's guards can't be grade 4 warriors?" Moto too didn't doubt the accuracy of Prince Okamoto's information. The high-rank warriors above grade 5 were all famous people, and it wasn't hard to investigate them. It was impossible for a hidden expert to suddenly appear out of nowhere. "That's right." Prince Okamoto's eyes were filled with murderous intent. "Therefore, as long as you bring a warrior above grade 5, you can use this chance to kill Colin Angeli." "No!" Prince Abbas yelled. "Why not?" Seeing that his old enemy was against it, Prince Morve stepped forward and questioned without thinking. Prince Abbas looked at Moto too with a serious expression and said in a deep voice, "Your Majesty, Viscount Angli sent a letter and requested to meet you in front of the 2 armies. If you don't want to meet him, you can reject him. But if we agree to his request for a meeting, then suddenly kill him during the meeting, then the reputation of the giant devil empire will be completely destroyed." Moto too's expression turned serious. He didn't say anything for a long time, but his eyes were filled with hesitation. It seemed like he was struggling. Prince Morve saw the hesitation on Moto too's face, so he yelled, "The giant demon empire is already in a bad situation, and there's no point in talking about reputation. I think we should use this chance to kill that Colin Angeli." Prince Abbas immediately sneered, "Malu, do you use your brain when you speak? Do you think it's worth it to throw away the reputation of the empire just for Colin Angeli?" Moto too remained silent. "Your Majesty." Prince Okamoto couldn't help but yell, "Please let me escort you to the meeting. I'll kill Colin Angeli with my own hands." As for you, you just have to say that I killed him because I couldn't accept the fact that I lost. It's my own decision, and it has nothing to do with the Empire. You can even take away my throne after that as an apology to the northern frontier. You can also draw a line between us and keep the Empire's reputation. I know that I'm unforgivable, so please give me a chance to redeem myself. I'm willing to become your blade and stab any enemy, even if I have to die. Moto too blinked his eyes. It seemed like he was touched by Prince Okamoto's words. However, he still didn't agree. Prince Morveh snorted after seeing this. Okamoto, you're just a rank 3 warrior. How can you kill Colin Angeli? How can you take on the responsibility of protecting the king? His words were not polite, but the way he looked at Prince Okamoto was much gentler. It seemed like he was also moved by the prince's actions. Then, Prince Malvi turned to Moto too, bowed solemnly, and said with a deep voice, Your Majesty, please allow me to escort you to this meeting. It was obvious that this prince was going to sacrifice himself to assassinate Colin Angeli. Moto too blinked his eyes and asked in a deep voice, Prince Morveh, is it worth it for Colin Angeli? Prince Morveh put his left hand on his chest and bowed slightly. Your Majesty, it's your decision. I'll only follow your orders. Moto too remained silent again. Prince Okamoto saw this and opened his mouth again, Your Majesty. I think it's worth it. Although it was impossible for the Black Guards to take down the monarch city, they could still kill and plunder wantonly within the Empire's borders and deal a heavy blow to the Empire. It was impossible for the army in Royal City to stop the cavalry army that came and went like the wind. Furthermore, with Colin Angelo's current military talent, if he was given another 3 to 5 years of development, he would probably become another Marquis of Garcia. If we don't take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of him, then the future of the Empire will be bleak. Prince Okamoto's words made Moto too make up his mind. Marquis Garcia had been suppressing the Empire for more than 20 years. If another Marquis Garcia appeared, with that in mind, King Moto too took a deep breath and turned to Prince Morveh. Prince Morveh, please come with me to meet this Colin Angeli. Yes, Your Majesty. Prince Abbas still wanted to persuade him, but Moto too already turned around. Dismissed. Chapter 205. Troll King City. The faint light of dawn shone from the east, gently tearing away the darkness on the ground. The hazy light shone on the snow on the ground, giving off a cold glow. Clop, 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 the crisp sound of hooves quickly broke this tranquil and beautiful scene. Countless black shadows suddenly appeared on the horizon and continued to approach the great Demon King city. However, when they were about 10 kilometers away from the palace, the Black Guards stopped. However, this almost tangible pressure still made the troll guards on the city feel suffocated. Ever since the capital was moved, this was the first time an enemy had come so close to the heart of the Troll Empire. Moreover, it was the Black Guard that instilled fear in countless trolls. Not long after the arrival of the Black Guards, the south gate of the great Devil King city slowly opened. King Moto too and Prince Malyu walked out. Behind them, a group of wolf cavalry guards were standing guard at the city gates. If anything happened, they would rush out of the city gates and bring their emperor back to the city. At the same time, 2 figures walked out from the black cavalry. The 2 sides slowly approached. After walking for a while, King Moto too recognized Colin, but the guards beside Colin made him frown slightly. Malyu, is the person beside Colin Charles St. Hilda? Prince Malyu narrowed his eyes and nodded, Your Majesty, it should be. Following which, the troll prince revealed a bloodthirsty smile. I heard that this brat was the one who leaked our plan. Hee, we can kill him together with us later. King Moto too shook his head and said softly, No, we can kill Colin, but it's best to capture Charles alive. We can use him to negotiate with the Duke St. Hilda. Yes, Your Majesty. Prince Malyu nodded and reminded, Your Majesty, when the fight starts, you can run back immediately. Don't worry about me. King Modo II nodded and did not refute. This troll emperor was not known for his strength and was only at rank 3. In fact, this was a rather rare occurrence in the giant demon empire where the strong were respected. But there was a reason for this. Unlike the inheritance law of the Radiance Empire, the inheritance law of the giant demon empire did not use the eldest son inheritance system. The successive troll emperors were usually the strongest members of the troll royal family, the Vol'jin family. The most powerful person in this generation of the Vol'jin family was undoubtedly the Paladin Prince of the North, Otto Vol'jin. However, Prince Otto was famous for being a martial arts fanatic and had no interest in becoming the emperor. Moreover, when he rejected the throne, Prince Otto said something that would deeply affect the ownership of the throne of the giant demon empire. What the empire needs now is an emperor with political wisdom, not a warrior with brute strength. At that time, the Troll Empire had been suppressed by the blackguards to the point of suffocation. Moreover, the previous Troll Emperor had his head chopped off in a duel with Duke Saint Hilda. Such a blow caused many Troll nobles to reflect. Was martial strength a requirement to become the Troll Emperor? Under such circumstances, the words of the most powerful person in the Troll Empire, Prince Otto, had a decisive effect. Thus, the ownership of the throne of the giant demon empire did not take martial strength into consideration. It was also because of this that King Modo II, who had displayed great political talent, stood out and ascended the throne. After ascending the throne, this emperor had indeed been diligent and had pushed for many reforms, allowing the giant demon empire to regain its vitality. If not for the Saint Hilda brothers putting on a show last year that caused the giant demon empire's elite army of 300,000 to be annihilated, the northern frontier would have to face a gradually growing giant demon empire. Soon, the two sides met at the center of the Black Cavalry and the giant demon empire's city. Your Majesty King Modo II, Your Highness Prince Malu, please allow me to bring the Duke of Saint Hilda's warm greetings to you. Colin smiled and bowed slightly. The corner of Modo II's mouth twitched. Perhaps he was displeased with Colin's friendly greeting, but he still maintained his poise on such an occasion. After returning the greeting, he smiled and said, Viscount Angli, welcome to the royal city. Please also pass on my greetings to the Duke of Saint Hilda. Then, he turned to Charles and greeted, Your Excellency Charles, I didn't expect you to have such deep feelings for the northern frontier and your father. King Modo II thought Charles was playing the spy, so he was obviously mocking Charles's betrayal. However, Charles did not respond to Modo II's mockery. Even his expression did not change at all, as if he did not hear anything. Colin smiled and continued, Your Majesty, let's get down to business. Okay. King Modo II did not waste too much time on Charles. He nodded and said, I wonder what Viscount Angli wants to talk to me about. Colin looked into King Modo II's eyes and said with a smile, First of all, to thank you for agreeing to this meeting, I have a big gift for you. What gift? King Modo II asked curiously. Colin turned around and waved his hand behind him. Then, more than 100 troll captives were pushed out and walked toward the royal city. Your Majesty, these troll captives are my big gift to you. They're all professionals in the army going south. I'm sure you don't want them to die under the blades of the Black Cavalry, right? King Modo II observed carefully. After confirming that the figures walking over were indeed trolls, he was relieved and asked, So, you don't want a ransom? Colin shrugged and said generously, Since it's a gift, why would I want a ransom? Then I thank you for your generosity. King Modo II finally showed a sincere smile. He then asked, What happened to the other troll captives? Killed them all, Colin said casually. Prince Malvi's eyes widened. He could barely hide his murderous intent. King Modo II's heart was bleeding, but he still kept calm on the surface. He continued to ask, Okay, Viscount Angli, I'll accept your gift. Now, let's talk business. Colin nodded with a smile. Okay. Your Majesty, I came to see you this time to make peace. Make peace? Yes. Continuing to fight won't benefit either side. So, why don't we make peace? Colin paused and said, of course, there are conditions. Speak. King Modo II's tone turned cold. Colin did not seem to notice it at all. He continued casually, Your Majesty, as long as you agree to the following conditions, I'll immediately withdraw my army. First, you'll personally apologize for attempting to invade the northern frontier. Second, to compensate the Angeli family for their losses in this war, the Troll Empire must compensate 18 million gold coins, which can be paid over 5 years. Third, the Troll Empire must promise never to be enemies with the northern frontier again and disband their army. They can only keep 30,000 regular soldiers at most. Fourth, the Troll Empire will send 200,000 young and strong slaves to the northern frontier. Fifth. King Modo II's face turned pale when he heard Colin's first condition. However, when Colin listed out more ridiculous conditions, King Modo II calmed down. A cold smile slowly appeared on his face. He looked at Colin as if he was looking at a clown. When Colin finally finished listing all the conditions, Modo II smiled and said, I'm not going to give you a chance. Viscount Angli, we also have a condition for this negotiation. Oh. Your Majesty, please go ahead. Our condition is. King Modo II looked at Prince Malvi, who was already furious, you must die. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, Prince Malvi charged towards Colin like an arrow released from a bow. Chapter 206. Colin, I'll take your life. Prince Malvi yelled like a clap of thunder. His huge and slightly bloated body became exceptionally nimble at this moment. Like a venomous snake coming out of its hole, he shot towards Colin's direction like lightning. Facing Prince Malvi's sudden attack, Colin quickly retreated as if he had expected it. At the same time, 2,000 cavalrymen from the Black Cavalry immediately rushed out from both sides to cover Colin's return. The trolls were not slow either. A team of wolf riders rushed out from the city gate and prepared to support Modo II. The moment Prince Malyu attacked, Modo II immediately ran towards the city gate. He was not worried about Prince Malyu. As a 5th-grade warrior, killing Colin and Charles should be a piece of cake. Even if it delayed him for a while and he was entangled by the Black Guard, with Prince Malyu's strength, if he wanted to run, he would be able to escape. At this time, Prince Malvi was already in front of Colin. He had a ferocious smile on his face. His hands were like iron as he reached for Colin's head. But what he did not expect was that Charles, who was next to Colin, suddenly stepped forward and blocked Colin's path. Prince Malvi was confused. If it was a normal guard, there would be no problem in risking his life to save Colin. But how could Charles be a normal guard? He was the eldest son of the House of St. Hilda. Even if he had been stripped of his title of Marquis in the northern frontier, as long as his surname was St. Hilda, and as long as the blood of the Paladin family flowed in his body, no one would dare to underestimate him. In a sense, Charles's life was even more precious than Colin's life. That was why Modo II warned Prince Malvi that he could kill Colin, but Charles must be captured alive. He was afraid that letting Charles die here would infuriate the Duke of the Northern region, who was a holy knight. But now, Charles seemed to have turned into a loyal knight of the Angeli family, fearlessly facing Prince Malvi's murderous attack. Prince Morve was terrified. With his strength, killing Charles was like killing a chicken. But he didn't dare. Whether it was Modo II's warning or the threat of the Duke of Paladins, Prince Malvi did not dare to touch the blood of the direct descendants of the House of St. Hilda. Left with no choice, Prince Malyu could only change his strategy. With 2 crisp cracking sounds, Charles's arms were instantly dislocated. Prince Malvi threw Charles to the ground and continued forward. But as soon as he took a step, he felt pain in his ankle. He looked back and saw Charles biting his right foot like a mad dog. Are you crazy? Prince Malvi could not understand why Charles would risk his life for Colin. However, the madness in his eyes sent a chill down Prince Malvi's spine. Resisting the urge to kill Charles, Prince Malvi controlled his strength and kicked Charles in the chest. Crack, a series of bone fracture sounds rang out one after another. It was unknown how many intact ribs Charles had left. Only then did Prince Malvi break free from Charles's entanglement, but Colin had already run far away. Boom! 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 Under the powerful stomp, deep pits appeared on the hard frozen ground. Using the recoil force, Prince Malvi rushed toward Colin like a giant elephant. In fact, when Prince Malvi suddenly turned on Colin, other than the black cavalry and the guards in the capital, there was a third force that rushed toward the meeting place. They were the troll captives that Colin had just released as a gift. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but when Colin finished talking about the terms of peace, these troll captives just happened to walk between the black cavalry and the troll capital, which was about where Colin and Modo 2 were meeting. Modo 2 chose to attack because he saw these troll captives nearby. At that time, he even secretly mocked Colin for being too careless and allowing these captives to get so close. Did he think that the troll wouldn't dare to do anything to him? At this moment, these troll captives immediately split into two groups. One group rushed toward Colin, and the other rushed toward Modo 2. Seeing this, Modo 2 thought that these troll captives were here to help him, so he immediately ordered loudly, "Don't worry about me, go help Prince Malvi stop Colin." However, these troll captives did not seem to hear Modo 2's order at all. They continued to rush toward him. Modo 2 frowned, but seeing that half of the troll captives were already rushing toward Colin, he did not say anything. He thought that these troll captives were only rushing toward him because they wanted to protect their master. However, in the next second, Modo 2 realized that something was wrong. This group of troll captives aggressively rushed in front of him. There was not the slightest trace of fear or respect on their faces. Instead, there was a heart-palpitating indifference. "What are you doing?" Modo 2 did not know what to do when he saw the troll captives surrounding him. However, the troll captives ignored Modo 2. They only surrounded him and stopped him from running toward the city gate. Modo 2 panicked. Seeing that black cavalry was approaching, he yelled fiercely, "Are you all crazy? Why are you blocking my way?" Then, Modo 2 saw a familiar face among the captives. "Gondo. What is the meaning of this? I have no intention of holding you accountable for the defeat outside the wind-howling castle. As long as you escort me back to the capital, I will not punish you at all." However, it was like Modo 2 was talking to a wall. These troll captives completely ignored him. On the other side, when Prince Malvi also saw the troll captives, he yelled excitedly, "Quick, quick, help me stop Colin." However, those troll captives had no intention of stopping Colin at all. Instead, they rushed toward Prince Malvi. "Are you all crazy?" Prince Malvi was also stunned. He did not understand why these trolls were helping the humans. These troll captives were all professionals picked from the army going south. Although their grades were not high, there were still a lot of them. Prince Malvi panicked. Seeing that Modo 2 and Prince Malvi were surrounded, Colin smiled and stopped running. Not long after, the black cavalry also caught up. Colin began to speed up. Knight Roger was already right in front of him. He let go of an empty horse, and Colin took the opportunity to jump on it. Nay! The black cavalry did not stop at all. They went around Prince Malvi, who was being held back by the troll captives, and charged toward Modo 2. The wolf riders also arrived at the same time. However, there were only 200 of them. They were like fragile pieces of paper in front of the 2,000 black cavalry. Modo 2 was already in deep despair. He could not understand why his people would betray him. Modo 2, die. Colin rushed over as fast as lightning, returning the arrogance of Prince Malvi 10 minutes ago. The knight's sword was raised high above his head. It shone with a chilling light under the morning sun. Moto 2's heart almost stopped at this moment. In his fear, he roared unwillingly, "What the hell? Colin, Colin. I agree to your conditions. I agree to all of your conditions." Ha ha ha. It's too late. Colin didn't want to waste any more time with him. He just rode past. The blade of judgment, in his hand shone with a golden light, and blood splattered everywhere. And a giant head. Chapter 207. On the city wall of the Troll Kingdom. When Prince Abbas saw Moto 2 being surrounded by a group of troll captives, he knew something was wrong. Although the wolf riders had already rushed out as soon as Prince Mayu attacked, if Moto 2 was trapped in place, even if the wolf riders arrived, he would not be able to get away from the black guards. Prince Abbas turned around and ordered the general of the city defense force, "We need to send out the troops immediately and bring His Majesty back to the city." However, Prince Okamoto immediately objected, "No. We don't have any knights left. Even if we rush out of the city, we won't be able to save His Majesty in time. Instead, we'll lose the last elite troop of the Empire and the city will be lost. Are you just going to watch His Majesty get killed by black cavalry? Black cavalry might not dare to kill His Majesty." Prince Okamoto did not back down. "However, if the city is lost, not only His Majesty, but also you, me, the troll nobles, and the citizens of the city will all be killed by black cavalry." Prince Abbas was speechless. Moreover, he also noticed that Prince Okamoto's words had caused the expressions of the surrounding troll nobles to change. It was obvious that they did not want black cavalry to enter the city. While they were hesitating, black cavalry had already arrived in front of Moto 2. Although the wolf riders had arrived, they were too few in number and were quickly separated by black cavalry. Then, the troll nobles on the city walls saw a scene they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Colin Angeli cut off Moto 2's head with one strike. All the troll nobles who witnessed this were stunned. It felt like all the sounds in the world had disappeared at this moment. It also felt like they were in a terrifying nightmare that they could not wake up from. Prince Okamoto clenched his fists. His heart almost jumped out of his throat. When he saw the troll captives betraying him, he finally understood why Colin insisted on meeting Moto 2 outside the city. This was a meticulously designed trap. The funny thing was that Prince Okamoto wanted to make up for his mistake and proposed the plan to assassinate Colin, trying to regain his position in Moto 2's heart. However, he would never have thought that Colin was also planning to assassinate him. Moreover, his methods were so strange that he couldn't understand it at all. What did Colin promise those troll captives that they dared to conspire to kill the Emperor of the Troll Empire? At this moment, the name Colin Angeli had replaced Marquis Garcia and was deeply engraved in Prince Okamoto's heart. It had become a nightmare that Prince Okamoto would never have the courage to fight against again. Prince Abbas saw Colin holding Moto 2's head in one hand and waving it in the direction of the Troll Empire. Fear and panic rose in his heart. He suddenly turned around and glared at Prince Okamoto. He yelled, "Okamoto! Didn't you say that the black cavalry wouldn't dare to kill His Majesty? Open your eyes and take a good look. His Majesty died because of you." Prince Okamoto clenched his fists and did not say anything. Looking at Prince Abbas's furious gaze, which was about to pierce through him, Prince Okamoto calmed down. He suddenly realized that Moto 2's death might be a good opportunity for him. "Uncle Abbas, you're right. Therefore, to atone for my mistake, I'm willing to go to the Black Cavalry and ask Colin Angeli for His Majesty's body." Hearing Prince Okamoto's words, Prince Abbas was stunned. A troll noble tried to persuade him in a low voice, "Prince Okamoto, if you go to the Black Cavalry now, aren't you afraid that Colin will?" "Then I deserve it," Prince Okamoto said righteously. Prince Abbas took a deep look at Prince Okamoto before looking at the black guards who were flaunting their prowess outside the city. He slowly nodded. "All right, then you'll be the messenger. Remember, not only do you need to redeem His Majesty and Prince Morve's bodies, but you also need to ask the Black Cavalry about the conditions for retreating. Yes, Uncle Abbas. I won't disappoint you again. Prince Okamoto bowed to Prince Abbas, then went down the tower and walked out of the city alone. For a moment, the lonely figure of Prince Okamoto slowly walking toward the boiling black guard formation had the feeling of the wind blowing and the water turning cold. At this moment, Colin was immersed in a fanatical mood. The cheers of the black cavalry around him made him feel like he was in the clouds. The bloody head in his hand was like a medal that symbolized supreme glory, and he couldn't help but feel a little smug. Of course, he hadn't completely lost his mind. Thus, when some of the hot-headed black cavalry generals wanted to ask for orders to charge into the troll capital, Colin decisively refused. The troll capital still had 50,000 elites defending it. Moreover, the narrow terrain of the city wasn't conducive for cavalry. Charging in rashly would only lead to disaster. This time, they had already wiped out the troll army of 100,000 and killed the troll emperor. Such a feat was already extremely impressive. It was better to stop while they were ahead, lest they end up making a fool of themselves. Just as Colin was about to give the order to retreat, he saw a lone figure walk out of the troll capital. Lord Viscounts, it seems to be Prince Okamoto. Let him come. Yes. Soon, Prince Okamoto arrived in front of Colin. Colin knew that this southern prince of the Troll Empire wasn't very strong, so he waved his hand to signal his subordinates to retreat. Prince Okamoto came in front of Colin and bowed respectfully. Dong! Colin casually tossed King Moto's head over, and it rolled to Prince Okamoto's feet. Coincidentally, the eyes that died with grievances were staring straight at Prince Okamoto. At the same time, Colin's mocking voice sounded. Okamoto, how about I let you be the emperor of the Troll Empire? Prince Okamoto suddenly raised his head. The fire of ambition in his eyes was not hidden at all. However, when he opened his mouth, he said something else. Lord Viscounts, you think too highly of me. I have no right to inherit the throne of the Troll Empire. Why? Colin frowned. Isn't your surname Vulcan? Prince Okamoto smiled bitterly. Lord Viscounts, don't forget that I just killed 100,000 troll soldiers. Also, to tell you the truth, I was the one who suggested King Moto II to come out of the city to meet you and assassinate you, but now, things have turned out like this, I have an undeniable responsibility for King Moto II's death. So, no matter what, the troll nobles in the capital will never agree to let me be the next emperor of the empire. Colin raised an eyebrow as if he was thinking about something. Prince Okamoto spoke again, Lord Viscounts, although I can't inherit the throne, I have a more suitable successor. Perhaps he can satisfy you more. Oh. Who? Prince Abbas. Chapter 208. Prince Abbas. Colin frowned in confusion. Clearly, he was not familiar with this troll prince. Yes. Prince Okamoto saw Colin's confusion and immediately explained, he is Prince Dongfang of the Troll Empire and a member of the Walkin family. He has the right to inherit the throne. Moreover, I've already been eliminated among the 4 princes of the empire. Prince Otto of the North is focused on pursuing the path of a warrior and has long since said that he has no interest in the throne. Therefore, in terms of ability and experience, Prince Abbas is the most promising candidate to become the next troll emperor. Colin rubbed his chin, his expression unreadable. He keenly noticed that Okamoto had only mentioned 3 princes and left out Prince Moro. This Prince Moro had followed Moto II out of the city and tried to assassinate Colin. Fortunately, Colin had Charles as a shield and a group of troll captives who had been turned into blood thralls. That was how he managed to avoid the assassination. However, that Prince Moro was indeed valiant. He had killed almost 100 troll captives. After all, these captives were professionals that Colin had picked out from an army of 100,000. Even so, if the black cavalry had not arrived in time, Prince Moro might not have been able to kill them all. Unfortunately, this valiant prince had been shot into a hedgehog. Colin had heard that he was still breathing. The vitality of a grade 5 warrior was truly tenacious. However, it was clear that Okamoto hoped that Colin could help him eliminate this candidate. Colin did not make a clear statement about this. Instead, he asked, "Then why do you say that Prince Abbas would be a more satisfactory successor to the throne?" "Because he is a firm peacemaker. He advocates for friendly relations with the northern frontier and mutual benefits, not military confrontation like now." Seeing that Colin did not seem to believe him, Prince Okamoto added, "Lord Viscounts, this Prince Abbas has a total of 3 lovers. All of them are humans and have a bunch of half-troll illegitimate children. However, he and his troll queen consort have no children, and their relationship is extremely cold." Colin couldn't help but laugh inwardly. This Prince Abbas was actually a human fetish. If that was the case, he would indeed improve the relationship between the Troll Empire and the northern frontier. Then how can I ensure that Prince Abbas successfully ascends to the throne? Prince Okamoto's eyes flickered as he said sinisterly, "Lord Viscount, right now, Prince Abbas is already the most likely candidate to ascend the throne in the royal city." "Is that so?" Colin understood what Prince Okamoto was implying. The so-called most likely candidate to ascend the throne within the royal city meant that there were other candidates outside the royal city who were more suitable than Prince Abbas. Clearly, the most suitable candidate for the throne was Prince Malvi, whom Prince Okamoto had purposely ignored. It seemed that among the troll leaders, the forces that were hostile to the northern frontier were still stronger than the forces that were close to the northern frontier. "Okay, I'll make sure that there are no other candidates more suitable for the throne in the royal city." "Thank you, Lord Viscounts." Prince Okamoto bowed again and said, "Lord Viscounts, I came to see you this time with the mission of making peace." "Making peace?" "Sure, I've been wanting to make peace for a long time, but Moto too didn't agree to the terms. Otherwise, things wouldn't have escalated to this point." "What terms do you have?" Colin then told King Moto too about the terms of peace that he had discussed with him earlier. Prince Okamoto's mouth twitched as he thought to himself, "No wonder Moto too wanted to kill you. These terms are not sincere at all. Lord Viscounts, if I go back with this agreement, I'm afraid that I'll be torn apart by the angry troll nobles." Colin smiled. He knew that his terms were indeed too harsh. However, those terms were meant to provoke Moto too so that he would make the first move. It was a plan to blame the troll for ruining the peace talks. Colin also knew that Moto too wouldn't agree to these terms. "Okay, then tell me what terms you're willing to accept." Then, the two bargained intensely and finally reached an agreement with great difficulty. There were 4 main terms in the modified agreement. First, the Troll Empire promised to maintain the current 50,000 regular army and not expand the army. Second, they would compensate the Angeli family 5 million gold coins for their war losses. Third, they would send 100,000 young and strong troll slaves to the Angeli family over a period of 5 years. Fourth, all caravans with customs documents issued by Ice Stone City would enjoy the preferential tariff reduction policy in the Troll Empire. Of course, in exchange, Colin would return Moto too's body and lead the Black Cavalry out of the Troll Empire. Such an agreement was undoubtedly a huge humiliation for the giant demon empire. However, they had no other choice right now. Although the Black Cavalry couldn't take down the Troll Empire, if such a cavalry army rampaged through the Troll Empire, it would bring unbearable losses to the Troll Empire. However, when Prince Okamoto brought such a peace agreement back to the Troll Royal City, it still aroused the anger of the Troll nobles. In the meeting hall, the Troll nobles were arguing. They were all cursing Colin's greed and criticizing Okamoto's weakness. Facing the criticism, Prince Okamoto said expressionlessly, "Everyone, if you know how ridiculous the terms Colin proposed to His Majesty Moto II were, then you'll understand that I've really tried my best to negotiate this agreement." As he spoke, he recounted the original peace agreement. Now, the voices of criticism were much quieter. Then, Prince Okamoto bowed to Prince Abbas and said, "Uncle Abbas, you're now the most respected person in the Troll Empire. What do you think of this agreement?" Prince Abbas was very satisfied with Okamoto's respectful attitude, but he still shook his head slightly. "Okamoto, I know you've done your best, but these conditions are simply a humiliation to the Troll Empire, especially the first condition that restricts the expansion of the army. If you agree to it, won't the empire forever lose the hope of rising?" "Uncle, I really can't get Viscount Angley to make any more concessions. However, if you talk to him, perhaps there's still hope." "Oh. Why?" "Because Viscount Angley thinks that you're the most likely candidate to inherit the throne. If you talk to him personally, perhaps he'll give you some face." Hearing this, Prince Abbas felt a little smug. Being able to gain the recognition of the enemy was a kind of glory. However, he did not dare to meet Colin in person. What if he was killed by Colin as well? Prince Abbas felt that he was only a step away from becoming the great demon emperor. He did not want to take the risk at such a crucial moment. "Ahem, how about this? I'll send an envoy to meet Viscount Angley on my behalf and get a decent agreement for the Troll Empire." Hearing this, the troll nobles immediately praised him. Prince Abbas accepted the praise with a flushed face, as if he had already ascended to the throne. Chapter 209. Troll Royal Palace. In the dead of the night, there was a faint fragrance in the air. It was the fragrance of the bluebell flower. This flower was one of the few flowers that could grow in the extreme climate of the sky ice plains. When it bloomed, it was like a vast blue ocean. Therefore, it became the national flower of the Troll Kingdom. Prince Okamoto stood in front of the window and looked at the faint light outside. No one knew what he was thinking. The fragrance of the bluebell flower kept wafting into his nose, calming his restless mind. "Your Highness, are you not going to sleep yet?" Princess Nala appeared behind him and asked softly. "Go to sleep first." Prince Okamoto turned around and smiled. "Okay." Nala nodded obediently and left quietly. This troll princess who was born in the side branch of the house of Saint Hilda was very cautious in this foreign country. Luckily, Prince Okamoto treated her well. The only thing that made Nala not know whether to be happy or worried was that Prince Okamoto had never touched her. To be honest, Nala obviously couldn't accept the appearance of a troll, but if she couldn't give birth to a child for Prince Okamoto, she felt like she had no one to rely on in this cold royal palace. When she heard that the Black Cavalry had fought their way to the royal palace and even killed Moto too, it was impossible for Nala not to be excited. But at the same time, she also felt a deep sense of fear. The troll wouldn't vent his anger on her, right? She didn't dare to say these words to Prince Okamoto. Because she knew that although this young southern prince respected her on the surface, this respect was more of a distance. Prince Okamoto obviously didn't know about the princess' worries. But even if he knew, he probably wouldn't care. Right now, he had his own worries. Prince Okamoto stared at the darkness in front of him. His deep eyes seemed to be able to pierce through the darkness and find the figure he had been waiting for. "Your Highness Okamoto, good evening." Finally, an old voice sounded behind Prince Okamoto. At that moment, Prince Okamoto's eyes lit up. "Good evening, Lord Sequin." A troll dressed in a black witch doctor's robe stood silently behind Prince Okamoto. His entire body was shrouded in a layer of dark green mist, obscuring his face. However, one could tell from his aged voice that he was very old. Prince Okamoto's attitude instantly became extremely respectful when he saw Voodoo Dr. Squin. This was because this was the leader of the Giant Devil Empire's War God Church, the White Wolf Shaman King. The status of witch doctors in the Giant Demon Empire was similar to the status of priests in the Radiant Empire. They didn't have much fighting power, but they firmly controlled the faith of the thousands of people in the Giant Demon Empire. They also had the inheritance of the Giant Demon Warrior profession. This white wolf shaman king lived in seclusion and never participated in the politics of the giant demon empire. He didn't even show his face when the enemy invaded. However, if he really did show himself, it would definitely have a huge impact on the political situation of the giant demon empire. Moreover, the coronation ceremony of the giant demon emperor was to be presided over by the white wolf shaman king, Sequin. I heard that Moto too has died at the hands of the black cavalry. Sequin's voice was very low, but it was clearly transmitted into Prince Okamoto's ears. It even had an intimidating effect. Yes, His Majesty was unfortunately killed by Colin Angeli, Prince Okamoto answered honestly. Yes. Sequin nodded. His tone didn't fluctuate much, as if he didn't care at all. Then, who do you think is more suitable to inherit the throne? Faced with such a straightforward question from the White Wolf Shaman King, Prince Okamoto was slightly uncomfortable. However, he quickly adjusted his attitude and said respectfully, I think Prince Abbas is more suitable to become the next emperor of the empire. Sequin didn't say anything. His cold gaze lingered on Prince Okamoto's face, as if he was examining something. The long silence made Prince Okamoto's hair stand on end. He even felt that the White Wolf Shaman King's gaze was tangible, like a venomous snake shuttling back and forth on his body. Finally, Sequin retracted his gaze and said calmly, You should know Prince Abbas's political orientation, right? Do you really think that a weak prince who admires human culture should inherit the throne of the empire? Prince Okamoto's expression didn't change. He replied, Sir, I think that in the current situation, perhaps reaching a temporary truce with the northern frontier is the best choice. Moreover, the northern frontier is now in internal strife. It's still unknown whether the House of St. Hilda can maintain its position as the ruler of the northern frontier. At this time, we should temporarily avoid the brunt of the conflict and recuperate. Sequin was silent for a while before asking, Prince Abbas is now in charge of the peace negotiations with the Black Cavalry. Yes, and Prince Abbas has already made some progress. The Black Cavalry has made some concessions again. Is that so? It seems that Colin Angeli is giving Prince Abbas face. Sequin's tone was emotionless. Of course, the Black Cavalry is probably in a hurry to go back and deal with the chaos in the northern frontier. He doesn't want to waste time here. Prince Abbas's political stance will also help to quickly reach a truce agreement. After all, Viscount Angli also wants to see Prince Abbas ascend the throne. Humph. Since when does the giant demon empire need to consider the opinions of the people of the northern frontier? Sequin said coldly. Then, without waiting for Prince Okamoto to speak, he asked a seemingly unrelated question, Prince Okamoto, you don't have any children yet, right? Not yet. That's good. The son of Moto too is still young and can't lack education. Why don't you adopt him and teach him well? Prince Okamoto seemed to have realized something, and his heart skipped a few beats. He hurriedly replied, All right, I'll work hard to be a qualified father. Sequin nodded in satisfaction, then said casually, I hope you can not only be a good father, but also a good emperor. What? Prince Okamoto raised his head in surprise. Yes, I'll recommend you to inherit the throne. The smoke around Sequin quietly dispersed, revealing a wrinkled face. His deep eyes were full of encouragement for Prince Okamoto. But, I've just sent 100,000 soldiers to their deaths, and caused His Majesty Moto II to die outside the capital. Strictly speaking, the responsibility for these failures should not be borne by you alone. Moreover, I can accept a stumbling emperor, but I can't tolerate an emperor who grovels. Sequin's eyes instantly became sharp. If Prince Abbas really inherits the throne, then it won't be long before the Troll Empire becomes a vassal of the Empire of Light. Even the noble bloodline of the Vol'jin family will be tainted by human blood. Prince Okamoto lowered his head, as if he could not bear Sequin's gaze. He said solemnly, Sir, I understand what you mean. Don't worry, I'll never touch that human queen. Sequin nodded in satisfaction, and comforted him again. You don't have to worry that your previous failures will hinder you. I'll help you persuade the troll nobles one by one. You just have to remember that the troll empire can tolerate temporary failures, but you can't break your spine just like that. Prince Okamoto shuddered, and involuntarily straightened his back. He looked straight into the White Wolf Shaman King's sharp eyes and said loudly, "Yes, I'll always remember your teachings." Chapter 210. Outside the Troll Kingdom, in the Black Cavalry's camp. In the tent, Colin was circling around Prince Malvi's massive body, pinching and patting him from time to time, as if he was feeling the other party's explosive muscles. After all, this was the first rank 5 blood thrall that Colin had turned. He was like a child who had gotten a new toy and couldn't help but explore it. Furthermore, this Prince Malvi had left an extremely deep impression on Colin in the previous battle. More than half of the blood thralls that had been turned from nearly 100 troll prisoners had been killed by this rank 5 warrior. One had to know that Colin only knew one way to kill a blood thrall, and that was to chop off the head. The rest of the injuries wouldn't be fatal. This also meant that blood thralls, who were fearless and had no fatal weaknesses, would always have an absolute advantage when facing opponents of the same rank. Furthermore, one could see the strength of this Prince Malvi's battle prowess. However, even though he had lost a large number of troll blood thralls, Colin was still very satisfied to be able to obtain a high-ranked fighter like Prince Malvi. Colin estimated that even if he transformed, he might not be a match for this Prince Malvi. However, with the help of the bat wings, Colin had an absolute advantage in mobility. If he wanted to run, even Prince Malvi wouldn't be able to stop him. At this point, the number of members of the Blood Shadow Guard had increased to 108. Yes, it just so happened to be 108 generals. His gains from the Troll Kingdom this time included 1 rank 5, 1 rank 4, 5 rank 3, and 14 rank 1 and 2 professionals. Colin put ghost masks on these troll blood thralls and even covered their skin with thick full-body armor to prevent others from recognizing their identity and race. Just as Colin was rubbing his chin and admiring the new members of the Blood Shadow Guard, an attendant's voice came from outside the tent. "Lord Viscounts, the troll emissary requests an audience. Let him come in." Yes. Soon, a troll emissary walked into the tent. As he bowed towards Colin, he secretly observed the group of blood thralls standing in the tent from the corner of his eyes. Because they were covered in full-body armor, the troll emissary naturally couldn't recognize the identities of these blood thralls. He could only sigh. Viscount Angli's personal guards were truly impressive. Huh. Why does the figure at the front look so familiar? Just as the troll messenger was in a daze, Colin asked calmly, "Did Prince Abbas send you here again? Does he still have a problem with the peace agreement?" The troll messenger hurriedly retracted his probing gaze and replied, "Lord Viscounts, Prince Abbas did not send me." "Who is that?" "I am here on the orders of the new emperor of the giant devil empire, His Majesty Gang Ben." "Wait." Colin quickly interrupted the emissary and asked in disbelief, "Who did you say the new emperor is?" "It's His Majesty Okamoto." Colin blinked, confirming that he had not misheard. The new emperor of the giant demon empire was not Abbas, but Okamoto. Suddenly, he began to laugh. Because Colin finally realized that he had been tricked by Okamoto. However, he did not mind too much. After all, he had been prepared to let Okamoto inherit the throne, but Okamoto himself had refused. It turned out that this guy already had an idea and had even used Colin. Not only did he get Colin to help him get rid of Prince Malvi, he also used the peace agreement to attack Prince Abbas's prestige. Although he said that he did not want to inherit the throne, he had been secretly scheming, retreating in order to advance, and had the last laugh. Hee hee. Colin laughed coldly. This Okamoto could not withstand a single blow on the battlefield, but he was like a fish in water in political struggles. "Interesting. Why did your emperor send you to see me?" Lord Viscounts, His Majesty wishes to meet you again. Just like last time, 5 kilometers away from the capital, but you cannot bring any guards. Hee, sure. As long as your emperor is not worried that I will twist his head off, then let's meet. Colin casually agreed. He did not care about Okamoto's strength, and even if an accident happened, no one would be able to stop him if he wanted to escape. He wanted to see what this new giant demon emperor wanted to say to him alone. Yes, Lord Viscounts. The time will be tomorrow at noon. What do you think? Sure. The next day, noon. The warm sun shone on this silver world, and the walls of the royal city, which were made of huge blocks of ice, reflected a beautiful light. With a dull rumble, the southern gate slowly opened. Okamoto walked out alone. On the black cavalry side, Colin walked towards the capital alone. Not long after, the two met midway. I haven't seen you for a few days, and you've changed your mind. You really gave me a surprise, Your Majesty Okamoto. Lord Viscounts, this matter is indeed my fault. But I also have some difficulties that are difficult to speak of. I hope you can understand. Looking at the humble Okamoto, Colin's vigilance did not decrease at all. Instead, it increased. From the first time they met, Colin knew that Okamoto was an extremely tolerant person. Back then, when Okamoto went to chilly Winter Castle to seek peace, Colin had secretly compared him to a scoundrel from another world. Now, he felt that his judgment was very accurate. Your Majesty is too polite. I express my sincere congratulations on your ascension to the throne. I also hope that in the future, both sides will be more friendly and less hostile. Thank you, Lord Viscounts, for your congratulations. Okamoto chuckled and nodded. I have always believed that the giant demon empire and the northern frontier should get along amicably and not continue to be at odds. Therefore, I am prepared to accept the peace agreement that you proposed previously. I hope this goodwill can make up for some of the previous misunderstandings. Very good. I believe this agreement is a new beginning. Colin was also very satisfied with Okamoto's straightforwardness. He then took out the prepared sheepskin scroll, signed it, and handed it to Okamoto. Okamoto also signed it immediately. The peace agreement was officially reached. Colin took the agreement and chuckled. I will withdraw my troops tomorrow. I hope that the next time we meet, it won't be on the battlefield. I hope so too, Okamoto said seriously. He was really scared after being beaten by Colin. Even the terrifying scene of the black guards charging had become a nightmare that he could not get rid of. There were a few times when he dreamed about it in the middle of the night, and he was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. Colin smiled and shook hands with Okamoto. Actually, when I first met Your Majesty, I felt that we would become friends. Really? Okamoto was pleasantly surprised. It is my honor to be your friend, Viscount Angley. Colin laughed. May our friendship last forever. May our friendship last forever. After shaking hands, the two of them hugged each other as if they were old friends who were reluctant to part ways. But after turning around, they revealed cold gazes almost at the same time. Obviously, this friendship only lasted for a few seconds. Chapter 2:11. At the end of April, Colin led his army back to Ice Stone City. At this time, spring had already arrived in the northern frontier. Greenery could be seen everywhere on the roadside. The lush green grass swayed in the wind and stretched its proud body in the spring breeze. The layers of greenery completely covered the land. What made Colin even more happy was the wheat fields that had basically been completely cultivated. Although the other parts of the northern frontier were in a mess and people's brains were about to explode, the Angeli family's territory was very peaceful. The existence of the 30,000 Silvermoon Guard, sufficient food reserves, and geographical location far away from the center of the storm made it difficult for the flames of war to spread to this territory. Occasionally, there would be some sporadic slave rebellions and rebels from outside, but they were quickly suppressed. This year's spring harvest was not affected too much. The messenger had already sent the news of the victory back to Ice Stone City in advance. Therefore, when Colin arrived, a large number of people had already gathered outside the city to welcome him. The military band played a triumphant melody at the right time. Colin rode his horse out of the crowd, and saw a figure riding a horse towards him from the crowd that had come to greet him. It was Vera. The young girl was wearing a white military uniform today, and there was a golden lion emblem of the House of St. Hilda on her chest. Her golden hair was tied into a ponytail and it swayed freely behind her head with the jolting of the horse. "Colin, welcome home." Vera slowed down as she approached Colin. She was panting slightly as she revealed a beautiful smile to him. Colin rode his horse to Vera's side and reached out his hand to hug the young girl's slender waist. He then carried her in front of him and rode on the same horse with her. Vera did not stop Colin's actions, but her face was red and she was a little shy. "The last time we rode on the same horse was a year ago," Colin whispered into Vera's ear as he sniffed the fragrance of the young girl's body. Vera could feel the warm and moist breath on her ear and she could not help but curl up in Colin's arms as she reminisced about the past. "That's right, time really flies. The son of a nameless baron has now become a great hero who destroyed an army of 100,000 trolls and killed the troll emperor himself." Colin laughed, then shook his head and said, "So what if he's a great hero? The Duke of St. Hilda is still unwilling to marry you to me." Vera's expression darkened as soon as she heard Jiang Yuning's words. Until now, Colin's emissary to chilly Winter City hadn't been received by the Duke. Colin couldn't understand. Was the Duke still confident that the Golden Lion Legion alone could quell the Northern Frontier's rebellion without Colin's help? Was he not worried that Colin would side with the rebels? With Colin's current military strength, he had already become a force to be reckoned with on the Northern Frontier. However, the Duke of St. Hilda seemed to turn a blind eye to this and nobody knew what he was thinking. However, Colin wasn't in a hurry. The St. Thean family's main target was definitely not the Angeli family. Therefore, after dealing with the trolls, Colin didn't believe that they would come looking for trouble with him again. Of course, this was the best time to sit back and watch the tigers fight. Hold on tight to the chips in your hands. This was the House of Medea's motto, which was very suitable for Colin's current state. He wasn't in a hurry to place his bets. The longer he delayed, the more valuable the chips in his hands would be. While he was thinking, Colin had already entered Ice Stone City under the escort of the crowd. Both sides of the street were filled with people who had come to welcome them. They loudly cheered Colin's name, creating waves of cheers. Colin smiled and waved his hand in greeting. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This trip to the Troll Empire had won Colin an extremely high reputation. It could even be said that as his battle achievements spread and fermented, Colin's reputation on the northern frontier might rise to the point that it was second only to the Duke of St. Hilda. This wasn't nonsense. Although Colin's surprise attack this time was actually taking advantage of the fact that the Troll Empire was relatively empty, Marquis Garcia was the undisputed number one in terms of attacking the Troll Empire's strength. However, the normal citizens of the northern frontier couldn't tell the difference. They didn't know how much of the 100,000 troll army Colin had annihilated was, or how much of a difference there was between their battle strength and the elite army led by Prince Gambir. In their eyes, although Colin hadn't annihilated as many trolls as Marquis Garcia, he had still cut off the head of a troll emperor and forced the Troll Empire to sign a humiliating peace treaty. This kind of achievement couldn't be said to be inferior to Marquis Garcia's. Moreover, the Battle of Shadow Canyon had already caused Marquis Garcia to fall from his pedestal. With this, Colin was already showing signs of replacing Marquis Garcia as the number one general of the northern frontier. With a beauty in his arms and an army behind him, surrounded by fanatical citizens who lined the streets to welcome him, his ears filled with sincere and fervent praises. This kind of scene was probably something that every man yearned for. Colin couldn't help but feel a little lightheaded under the warm spring breeze. After returning to Red Castle, Colin washed up and rested for a while before starting the banquet. Today, Red Castle's banquet hall displayed its most beautiful side to congratulate the soldiers who had returned from this great victory. Steward Aemon stood at the entrance of the hall with a red face, proudly welcoming the guests who had arrived. The attendants of the Angeli family were also in high spirits today. Their lord's achievements made them feel proud, and their backs were straighter than usual. Because the people invited to the banquet were all officers of the expedition to the Troll Empire, many of them weren't nobles, so the etiquette was relatively casual and there weren't too many restrictions. Moreover, because they had just returned from the battlefield, these officers still seemed to be emitting a thick scent of blood. Their gazes carried traces of killing intent, causing the entire banquet hall to be filled with the aura of a powerful army. Everyone chatted and laughed without any scruples, and their voices quickly drowned out the band's performance. This was an internal celebration banquet, and Colin didn't send out invitations, so there weren't any guests sent by other families. The only outsider was the dwarf messenger who had arrived in Icestone City a month ago. This dwarf messenger had been waiting for Colin in Icestone City for so long, and he had long accumulated a stomach full of resentment. Now that he saw these officers who had little to do with elegance and nobility, he couldn't help but feel a sense of contempt. In his opinion, the Angeli family hadn't risen to power for long, so they didn't have a strong foundation, and there was still a barbaric aura in their bones. At this moment, Colin and Vera appeared at the entrance of the hall hand in hand. Colin had changed into the Viscount's formal attire, with a roaring white bear emblem on his chest and the blade of judgment at his waist. At this moment, he carried the momentum of a great victory, and he walked with the might of a tiger, full of heroic spirit. Vera, who was beside him, wore a blue backless formal dress, and her dazzling golden hair was fixed by a thorny headdress. The soft ends of her hair formed a curly line on her fair shoulders, and her sea-blue eyes were even more dazzling in the contrast of the formal attire. Her height of 1.7 meters and the silver stiletto heels on her feet not only made her look tall and slender, but also accentuated her golden ratio figure incisively and vividly. When the two of them walked into the banquet hall, the noise instantly quieted down. All the officers, without anyone commanding them, actually saluted Colin in unison, and this made the dwarf messenger stand out, and he suddenly felt very awkward. However, he also put away his contempt a little, and he had some understanding of Colin's high prestige in the military. Colin naturally also saw the dwarf messenger, but he didn't pay him any attention. He only smiled and returned the greeting to the officers, and then announced the official start of the banquet. Chapter 2:12. At the end of the song, Colin hugged Vera and stopped spinning. Thunderous applause followed, and everyone praised Colin and Vera for their wonderful dance. Colin asked Vera to hold his arm as they walked to the side of the field and began to entertain the officers who were attending the banquet. After experiencing two major battles in Silvermoon City and the expedition to the giant demon empire, the Black Cavalry was now deeply engraved with Colin's brand. Even if Marquis Garcia returned to the northern frontier, he would not be able to easily take away this strong army. Colin even began to plan to change the name of the Black Cavalry. However, considering that Marquis Garcia was about to be redeemed, Colin was not in a hurry to change the name of the Black Cavalry. Otherwise, it would be a little ugly. He was now thinking of marrying Vera so that Marquis Garcia would become his father-in-law. Then, it would be easier for him to bargain with his son-in-law. Colin shook hands with the officers of the Black Cavalry one by one, and he also found that these people were looking at him with admiration and respect. In the beginning, these people had only chosen to be loyal to Colin because they obeyed Marquis Garcia's orders. However, now, they had already recognized the new commander of the Black Cavalry from the bottom of their hearts. Sure enough, the best way to conquer an army was to lead them to victory. After walking around the officers of the Black Cavalry, Colin finally arrived in front of the dwarf messenger. Dear Viscount Angeli, congratulations on your great victory in the expedition to the giant demon empire. Your achievements have overshadowed the sun in the sky. Ha, Count Anka, you are flattering me. When they were walking over, Vera had already whispered the origin of the dwarf messenger in Colin's ear. Anka Maynard, eldest son of the Marquis of Maynard. The Menham family was the most prestigious family among the dwarves. Their fief was not in the northern frontier, but in the Flaming Territory. The so-called Crimson Flame Territory was actually the territory of the Radiance Empire's royal family, the world-purifying Crimson Flame, San Lorenzo family. It was located in the center of the empire and was surrounded by the East, South, West, and North territories. Therefore, Marquis Maynam was naturally a vassal of the San Lorenzo family. The eldest son of Marquis Maynam, Count Anka, was actually about the same age as Colin. However, dwarves generally looked older, and they liked to grow thick beards, so he looked like he was in his 30s or 40s. He was less than 1.3 meters tall, and his bloated figure made him look even more comical. Viscount Angley, you are too modest. Count Anka always had a simple and honest smile on his face, but the light that flashed through his eyes from time to time let Colin know that this was not a simple character. May I know why Count Anka has come to Ice Stone City from so far away? Colin also put on a harmless smile. There are two main things. Count Anka seemed to be an impatient person as he immediately said, the first thing is to tell you that the Menham family has decided to send troops to the northern frontier. Oh. Colin's eyes flashed as he continued to ask, may I know why the Menham family is sending troops? Of course it is to attack the Duke of St. Hilda. Count Anka said righteously. This duke is the ruler of the northern frontier, but he failed to fulfill his responsibility to protect his people. He allowed the northern frontier to be invaded by trolls and suffered from famine. Now, the people of the northern frontier are in dire straits and war is everywhere. He must pay the price. What price? Give up the position of the Dukes of the North. Give it to who? Count Anka glanced at Vera, who was beside Colin, and said in a deep voice, I think that Mr. Fong of the St. Thean family is more suitable to become the new ruler of the northern frontier. Hearing this, Vera's hand, which was holding Colin's hand, couldn't help but tremble slightly. Colin reached out and patted Vera's small hand, indicating that she didn't need to be nervous. Then, he looked at Count Anka and asked, so, is this Emperor Reinhardt's idea? No, this is the Menham family's idea. Moreover, we also received Marquis Dawson's request for help, so we decided to send troops to the northern frontier to attack the Duke of St. Hilda, who is not qualified to be the ruler of the northern frontier. I don't believe you. Colin secretly complained. He didn't believe that the Menham family didn't get Emperor Reinhardt's permission to send troops. If it wasn't for the Emperor of the Light Empire's tacit approval, the Menham family's troops wouldn't be able to leave the Flaming Territory safely. But why was that? Colin immediately fell into deep confusion. He originally thought that the San Lorenzo family and the House of St. Hilda's in-laws would definitely help the northern frontier defend against the St. Thean family's invasion. Moreover, the St. Thean family had a deep grudge with the Light Empire's royal family. It didn't make sense for the royal family to allow the Menham family to help the St. Thean family. What exactly was Emperor Reinhardt thinking? Instead of helping his brother-in-law, he was helping his enemy. A smug smile appeared on the corners of Count Anka's mouth when he saw Colin fall into deep thought, and then he continued. The second matter is directly related to you. Oh. Colin came back to his senses and nodded. Please speak. Father wants to exchange territories with the Angeli family. Exchange territories? Colin was a little confused, his brows deeply furrowed. Count Anka saw this and comforted him. Don't worry, the Menham family has always been fair. The territories we will exchange with you will definitely not be small, and the production will only be more, not less. Colin narrowed his eyes and seemed to understand something. He then asked, I'm afraid the Menham family isn't the only territory you want to exchange, right? Of course not. There's also the Morrison family, the Lamba family, the Billy family. Hearing Count Anka mention the names one by one, Colin confirmed the locations of these territories in his heart. He then realized that after exchanging these territories, the Menham family would completely move to the northern frontier, and their territory would be connected to the Dawson families. This would probably be the territory of the Dwarf Kingdom in the future. So this was what the San Lorenzo family was planning. Taking advantage of the internal strife in the northern frontier, they would move all the dwarves in the Flaming Flame territory to the northern frontier and allow them to establish their own country. After establishing their own country, the Dwarf Kingdom would naturally become a subsidiary of the Radiant Empire. The Dwarf King's loyalty would not be to the Lord of the Northern Frontier, but to Emperor Reinhardt. As for Colin and the other former lords of the Northern Frontier who would be exchanging territories with the Flaming Flame territory, they would probably also change factions and pledge their loyalty to the Emperor. This way, the San Lorenzo family would not have to pay any price to divide the Northern Frontier and even take away a large piece of territory. What a good plan! So, this was the reason why Emperor Reinhardt did not help his brother-in-law and was instead preparing to support his family's former enemy to become the Dukes of the North. Colin felt that this reason was a little far-fetched. Count Anka, this is a serious matter. I need some time to think about it. Of course. Count Anka nodded. However, you'd better hurry up. Our Menham family's army will enter the northern frontier in early May. The longer you delay, the less territory you will be able to get. I will think about it as soon as possible. Colin smiled faintly, nodded, and turned around to leave. After taking a few steps, Vera asked softly, Colin, will the northern frontier really become the territory of the St. Thean family? Colin turned his head and looked at Vera, who had a worried expression on her face. He comforted her gently, don't worry, if you want to change the owner of the northern frontier, you have to ask for my opinion. Vera looked at Colin, who was full of confidence, and suddenly smiled. She had faced despair many times before, but this mysterious man always managed to surprise her. This time, she believed that it would be no exception. Chapter 213. Icestone City. In an ordinary tavern on the west side of the city, the atmosphere was lively and cheerful. Wooden tables and chairs were casually moved around the hall, and the empty space in the middle became a simple dance floor. The passionate and heroic people of the northern frontier were displaying their poor dancing skills to their heart's content, drinking spicy and refreshing barley wine. The tavern owner directed a few waiters to continuously bring out all kinds of food and drinks from the bar. The flames burning in the fireplace dispelled the chill of early spring. Ding dong. Amidst the crisp sound of the doorbell, a flamboyantly dressed young man wearing purple clothes and a red bonnet walked into the tavern. He had a harp on his shoulder, the favorite instrument of the bard. When the people in the tavern saw the young man, they instantly cheered. They seemed to be very familiar with him. One of the patrons shouted loudly, "Honorable Mr. Bard. What story do you plan to tell us today?" The young bard took off his red bonnet, raised his chin, and walked to the center of the dance floor with an arrogant expression. He said reservedly, "I have a good story, but do you have good wine worthy of it?" "Why don't we have good wine?" Everyone jeered while looking at the tavern owner behind the bar. The tavern owner shook his head helplessly and reluctantly took out a bottle of beautifully packaged red wine, shouting, 3 silver coins. Remember to pay for him." "Got it, we've always been generous with our rewards. But the story has to be interesting, or else I won't pay." "Hurry, hurry, what good story do you have today?" Under the urging of the crowd, the bard unhurriedly took the wine the tavern owner handed over. He raised his head and took a sip, then closed his eyes in enjoyment. It wasn't until the crowd's condemnation became more and more intense that he opened his eyes again. As if he was still savoring the taste of the wine, he shook his head and fiddled with the harp in his hand. Amidst the crisp sound of the harp, the tavern gradually quieted down. Only the crackling of the charcoal in the fireplace could be heard. The patrons all took their seats and patiently waited for the bard's performance. Today, I will tell you the story of Viscount Angley's expedition to the Troll Empire. Hey, wait! How many times have we heard the story of Lord Viscount's expedition to the Troll Empire? Can't you tell us something new? Yes, yes. Otherwise, don't blame us for not paying for your drinks. Hearing the crowd's clamor, the bard snorted impatiently and said, "Of course I won't tell you what you already know." Then what do you want to talk about? Today, I'm going to tell you the story of how Viscount Angley killed the Troll Emperor. Do you want to hear it? Listen, listen, listen. Everyone quieted down. Although the story of Colin's expedition to the Troll Empire had already spread through the streets and alleys of Ice Stone City, there were still some details that had yet to be revealed. Now that the bard actually said that he knew the details of the most dramatic scene of this expedition, everyone's interest was naturally piqued. The bard coughed a few times, plucked the strings again, and began to sing. It was a windy and snowy morning. Outside the great Demon King city, the Black Cavalry's army pressed in. The evil trolls had been hiding behind the decaying King's city. They didn't dare to face the Black Cavalry's sharp edge. The embodiment of justice, the brave and invincible Viscount Angley. He invited the cowardly Troll Emperor to a duel. Duel? A voice suddenly interrupted the bard. Why did I hear that Viscount Angley invited the Troll Emperor to a meeting? The bard's brows instantly furrowed. Who interrupted me? Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and saw two middle-aged men sitting opposite each other in the corner. Under the dim candlelight, their faces couldn't be seen clearly, but their voices were very unfamiliar. Hey, you two outsiders who don't know the rules. You're not welcome here. Everyone instantly became noisy, wanting to chase away these two outsiders who were interrupting their story. The tavern owner walked over with a frown. He was just about to reprimand them, but when he saw their luxurious clothes, his tone immediately became much gentler. I'm sorry, both of you. Please leave as soon as possible. I don't want to cause trouble. The two outsiders looked at each other and smiled. They didn't make things difficult for the tavern owner. After casually throwing a few silver coins, they got up and walked out. The tavern owner picked up the silver coins and sighed in his heart. These two were really generous customers. Thus, he turned his head and reprimanded the drinkers angrily. You bastards, you just chased away two big customers. The drinkers naturally smiled mischievously again. They all said that they would definitely take care of the tavern owner's business and persuade him not to bother with the two outsiders. After leaving the tavern, the younger of the outsiders said to his companion, Sir, I actually heard a new version. Yes. The older outsider smiled and said, Hee, there are already 5 or 6 versions of the story of how Viscount Angley killed the Troll Emperor. Some say he killed him in a duel, some say he suddenly attacked during the meeting, some say he killed him in a sneak attack after the meeting, and some say he had the Black Cavalry pretend to be a troll captive and kill him. I keep feeling that someone is purposely spreading these different versions. Their goal is probably to hide the true process. But why would they do this? Killing the Troll Emperor is such a glorious thing, why would they hide the details? Perhaps, the method Viscount Angley really used, is a bit despicable. Perhaps. But when it comes to fighting on the battlefield, everything goes to the extreme. How can there be such a thing as despicable? Viscount Angley is still young after all. I'm afraid he still wants to establish a glorious image for himself. Young. That older outsider shook his head, not knowing what he was trying to deny. Let's go. We've wandered around Ice Stone City for so many days, it's about time we meet that mysterious Viscount Angley. Yes, sir. The two outsiders came to the Red Castle. It was already late at night. The guards in front of the castle blocked their path and questioned, Who are you? The older outsider shook off his cloak and revealed the golden lion insignia on his chest. The guards instantly widened their eyes. You are an envoy of the House of Saint Hilda. You don't recognize me? The outsider took 2 steps forward and let the light of the torches illuminate his face. The guards looked carefully for a moment and felt that this person looked somewhat familiar. Suddenly, one of the guards finally remembered and exclaimed, Lord Duke of Saint Hilda. It really is you. Juan. Welcome to the Red Castle. Lord Duke. The other guards finally woke up from their daze and hurriedly bowed in greeting. The Duke of Saint Hilda smiled and waved his hand, saying, Where's Colin? If he hasn't slept yet, have him come see me. Yes, yes. The guards hurriedly welcomed the Duke of Saint Hilda into the Red Castle. At the same time, one of them hurriedly ran towards the Lord's bedroom. The Dukes of the North had actually silently arrived at Ice Stone City just like that. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.